Good evening. This is Karen Herrick with the Reading Select Board. Today is May 18th. Thank you for joining us. I am here tonight with Carlo Bacci, Chris Haley, and Mark Doxer. The members of the Reading Select Board those are the members in attendance this evening. Welcome. We got some great news from the State House this week, much earlier anticipated opening of the economy and rolling back of the state of emergency. So I'm sure we will have some updates on that going forward, but that is welcome news to everyone. And it's all great. So, okay, so tonight we are going to have, we're going to finish up our liaison assignments. We're going to open the floor for public comment. We're going to have two hearings. The first is a vote on the classification and compensation schedules. We will also get an update on the census from Town Clerk Laura Gem as it relates to our options for redistricting or resizing precincts. We will hear from our town accountant, Sharon Angstrom. And we will also, we received a very extensive economic development update in our packet. And thank you for the staff involved in putting that together. So we will have a brief update, and there'll be an opportunity for board members to ask any questions that came out of the packet information. I understand that, correct me if I'm wrong, we do not have any outdoor dining applications for this evening.
Right.
Okay, so that's just our placeholder. Then our second hearing, we will discuss a new stop sign. After that, we will take a 5-minute break, and then we will move on to the item where we will discuss a proposal for 18 to 20 Woburn Street, discuss use of municipal parking lot. We will take care of one set of minutes, and then we can talk about future meeting agenda topics. So, so with that, I sent out the liaison assignments. I actually didn't see them in the packet. I assume they're in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any comments on liaison assignments before we do reports, or maybe you, as each person does their report, if they have any questions, we could take it up at that time. Let's see.
I'm good.
Okay. I have to change my view here so I can see you all. Hang on a second, gallery. Okay, that'll be easier. Okay, so it did work out conveniently for me that we're roughly equivalent, and I think it's a nice balance between some of the more heavy lifting committees, and also I definitely tried to balance like indoor and outdoor committees so that everybody can get out in the town forest, and I know those committees will all appreciate that. Okay, so who would like to go first with a liaison report? Okay, Carla, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. I have nothing to report, sorry.
Oops,
There you go. Thanks, Karen. So a couple of things. First, the Council on Aging met and is very excited that town meeting approved some funds to do some exploration related to the senior center and the needs of the senior center. And the council would very much like to be involved. They'd like to be involved in hearings. Kevin Bowmiller is kind of heads up the council. He's at all the meetings as well. And there is a great desire to do things. They sent a note to the board kind of indicating their desire. They're very excited by this. It's been a very long COVID period. And I think that we actually had some momentum building toward discussions of a senior center that had to kind of get stopped from COVID. So this is a chance to reinvigorate it. And the group is very excited, is willing to do lots of things. They also, in their letter, highlighted a number of reports that have already been done over the last several years at this point. One of which, I think the most recent one might be 2017-ish. And I know that things have changed a lot since 2017, but it was a good discussion of needs, and I think we've got some good fodder to use. And I would love to see our board engage on that topic as that process gets started and gets organized, maybe with some hearings and certainly some discussions. So that was great. So that's the council. The trust commissioners met and the only main activity there is we've been getting some bids for Reading Response going forward for chair cars and for services to be able to transport people and trying to get a contract. And it's hard to do right now because of the pandemic and everything having been kind of shut down. But they're entertaining some bids on that, and hopefully there'll be some updates coming in the next month or so. Third item, Karen and I today attended the presentation by the state fire marshal, and I want to make sure I get this right, so I got to pull it up on my email just so I've got it. So the firefighters and officers that were the responders to the High Street fire back in February of 2020 received citations from the governor's office for Firefighter of the Year recognition in recognition of their actions. It was great to see some folks, even if still masked, but it was great. And so the fire marshal came out, Bob attended, Karen and I attended, and it was very nice. And right at the moment that Greg Burns, the chief, finished the activities, the moment that he said thank you, fire alarm went off and they had a call, and the folks all had to get out of the truck and leave. So it was pretty amazing. It was great. Last item, the board had talked about wanting to do some badge pinning ceremonies and to kind of catch up on that, and probably also retirements. And so Ann and I reached out, and we're in talks kind of with the chiefs about how to do that. But just generally speaking, it sounds like 6:30 to 7 o'clock. So kind of the early side of one of our meetings, first thing, or maybe getting together a little bit earlier, something like that. But also their desire is not to do anything until we're able to have full numbers of people. So families can all come and things like that. And, you know, as we know, even a week ago, that was seeming way, way, way out. And maybe not so much now, but we can continue to have that discussion. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Excellent. Chris?
Technically, I didn't have anything until today, but I did end up, a resident reached out on Prescott Street about, what do you call it? An issue with a sign and blocking the corner over there that I reached out to Bob, who then put me in touch with Chief Clark and Deputy Chief Amendola about squaring away the mislabeled sign that's over there that's causing people to go out into the street when somebody parks on the corner, which ironically, somebody's parked there right now because I can just look out my window and it's right there. So it's the whole process with that seemed, you know, obviously I'm relatively new to this, but I really felt like a sense of accomplishment for something so small as that is going to make a difference on one of our residents and future safety over there. So thanks to all of those involved, and that's all I got for today.
Excellent. So I attended, since Chris brought up the concern with 186 Summer Avenue, I saw it on the RHC committee agenda, so I decided to participate. So there are a couple of things with the pandemic, you know, extending certain building permits and permissions, and that sort of has to be dealt with and addressed by town council. But one thing that I was not aware of, you know, going back to the agreement with 186 Summer Avenue, the select board was a signatory party to the deed restrictions. So Bob, I was wondering if you or somebody on staff could get us a copy of the deed restrictions on 186, so we know with technically what we signed. So I knew there were deed restrictions. I just did not realize that the select board was a party to it back then.
Okay.
All right, cool. RMLD, I just wanted to let everyone watching at home know that they are wrapping up the solar grant program. They have room for 5 or 6 more applications, they estimate. June 30th will be the deadline, and then the funds they expect will be exhausted. I did ask for an update as to how many installations we got in the various communities. Have not received that yet, so I'll bring that but I think that would be interesting. I was in North Reading this morning, and Reading Cooperative Bank has a building up there, and the entire back of the building is covered with solar panels now. And that wasn't there before. I had the opportunity to help with a sandwich drive-by outside the Pleasant Street Center. And to Mark's earlier update, I was able to hear a lot of input as to an excitement about reopening the Pleasant Street Center and maybe how things could be done differently. And just asking, what were the key bottlenecks. And what I didn't realize is how much was going on the second floor. So able-bodied folks can use a pretty big staircase, but non-able-bodied folks, to get to both the bathroom and the upstairs painting, conversations with staff, they all have to use that elevator. So, that was kind of illuminating as to, it's a good sized building, but what are logistically some of the challenges they're looking to do to deliver all the programs. So I think that's great. And I would love to see us take advantage of coming out of a pandemic to really optimize how we're using the space we have and follow up on that study. Okay, climate advisory. And Carlo, I'm going to defer to you in 1 second. The chair, David Zeke, did take a look at the gas leaks data, which is already up on the town website. And there are some leaks that we didn't know about, and some next steps that we could probably take. Andy Friedman also took a look at it, because there is this multi-town gas initiative where multiple communities get together and go back and put pressure on National Grid to really address some of these leaks, but some of them are bigger than we expected. So I do have a question for Bob as to what would be the best way to take some next steps with that data, in terms of sharing it, in terms of what would be the next steps as to what to do with some of these newly illuminated gas leaks.
Are you asking to try to coordinate that across other towns or just for Reading?
Just for Reading. I think you guys did a great job. The data is up on the website. Anyone can go and look at it. Now that we've had a couple of people that have been involved take a look at the data, there are some things that we can leverage this $50,000 investment to ask National Grid to take some more action to fix them. But I think we need some staff resources to do that.
Yeah, I'll give it some more thought, but my first impression is a letter from the board. You've done that in the past on different issues, and that's usually one of the more effective ways. So, you can put that on a future agenda, have a draft going in, and off it goes. On related topic, if you don't mind, the road diet on the northern section has been approved as final. However, there are gas main work needed up there, and as best we can figure, this is coming from the engineers and people that were at the virtual meeting, National Grid is unsure if they're going to be able to repair the main before the paving goes down. So in the past, when that happened, Rep. Jones was very helpful, jumped in and basically told him to do it. He's on standby now. The state is just perplexed at National Grid's lack of response and has at least told them, if you do not do work before we pave and you do it after, you will repave the whole road from curb to curb for whatever distance we say, which would be pretty expensive. So, I think, and I haven't talked to National Grid in a long time. So I'll certainly give them the benefit of the doubt, but National Grid's communication with the state right now is challenging on a project as big as that. So presumably they've got lots on their plate.
Great, thank you, Bob. I did attend the road diet update, and that is what I heard as well, that repaving needed to be curb to curb, which is much better than the patching that it's been done in the past. Yeah. Okay, just finishing up with the Climate Advisory Committee. So they had a community garden in the sustainability plan. So it was very exciting to have the announcement that there are funds, at least through the House, that might be available. So they are continuing to sort of work on that. And so Bob, we might need to come back with you. I mean, everybody, the folks involved in that planning effort sort of keep asking, when would we get DPW involved? And I don't know if we're there yet, but I just, to give you a heads up, we would, just like we coordinated on the composting program, I think we could benefit by coordinating with DPW on that as well. And then, and this is the part I wanted to get to, Carlo, Mr. Jetlagged. Did you attend a climate advisory committee meeting and talk about a farmer's market? Do you want to update us? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Yeah, they reached out based on my comments at our previous meeting, and that, you know, we want to bring more to downtown. And a great way to do that would be a farmer's market. Before the meeting, I reached out to Aaron Schaefer, who was great, and we had a nice conversation and on, you know, the work involved to put a successful one on. That's the key word, successful farmer's market. We don't want to just throw a farmer's market together. You have to have a mix of vendors, good vendors, you know, see if there's conflicts, see who wants to do more farmers markets, see who's already at capacity. So at the meeting, we discussed all those issues, and it's a pretty big undertaking. It's usually not a volunteer group. It's usually someone who takes it on. It's a part-time job to get all the vendors, line them up, rotate vendors, have a good mix, market the farmers markets, and so on. So I just made a comment, and, you know, this is a conversation Aaron and I had during the day was, you know, somebody needs to take this on, whoever wants to do it. And this year would be a kind of a scoping out mechanism, attend other farmers markets, see what vendors would even be interested in doing another one. I would love to see ours on a weekend because parking is easier on a weekend than on a late afternoon. Farmers markets are 7 days a week in a lot of towns, Monday through Sunday. The king of farmers markets used to be Swiss Bakers. They did about 17 a week when they were at full capacity, maybe more. And I don't know how many they're doing now. I'm sure they're doing several as they, you know, get back on their feet and continue to grow. So I would love to see a farmer's market, a good size one on the common, not by the depot, definitely on the common for visibility. And just, I know the residents would support it. So Wakefield's very successful. Stonham's had one. I don't know about COVID farmer's market, but Merrill's has one. Theirs is during the week. Winchester has one. I believe theirs is on a weekend. I'm not sure if Linfield has one, but I would love to see that. This would be for next year. But again, it's not town staff. It's not us. It's really a job. And that person usually gets compensated through the fees of the vendors and stuff like that, because it's a lot of work. I've had a booth at farmers markets over the years, 9 years past, with different businesses that we had, and nominal fees to be at one. But and then also Aaron mentioned, I think we all know there's a proposed bid being developed with the steering committee for downtown, and that bid, Business Improvement District, expressed a great deal of interest of taking the farmers market on if they formalize a bid. So right now they're in the planning stages, the meeting stages, to see if a bid makes sense. Because landlords have to buy in, businesses have to buy in. It's a big undertaking. Again, another pretty big project. So, but Aaron's been in touch with them, and they've expressed, the steering committee, that if this bid does get formed, they would want to consider taking a farmer's market on. So that was exciting. And then to piggyback on Bob's comment, and I know Karen was there, yeah, the north section is pretty much, I think, done with the feedback portion. But south of downtown, they're still taking feedback on lane markings. And, you know, I commented on the new development that's going in on South Main Street, and probably other new developments, and what they can anticipate and what can they do preemptively before they pave and paint that. But they seem to be taking the feedback comments and making adjustments. So if anyone has any comments or suggestions, I don't know the link off the top of my head, but it's on the town website. You can definitely send them an email, and they're a pretty good team there. It was a good meeting last week, and they'll respond.
Right. Thank you. I didn't know all that was involved with the farmers market. So, but I am very supportive of any efforts to undertake one. Any other board members have any comments? Okay. Okay. So we have public comment comment next on the agenda. Caitlin, do we have anyone who'd like to speak?
We do have someone who emailed you, but I do not see him in the waiting room at the moment.
Okay, Bob, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I have a couple of remarks if you don't mind.
Nope, thank
Um,
you, sorry.
Certainly. You all saw the news out of the governor yesterday. Some of it was a bit of a surprise. The most important takeaway to me is June 15th is when the state of emergency ends, and that affects a lot of things. So that is one of the allowances that the state of emergency did let happen. We're still recovering from the flood in town hall. So I can't tell you whether June 15th is possible in the select board's meeting room, but clearly we can make other arrangements. We had intended to work on some technology in your room to allow hybrid meetings, if that's what the board would choose, where some members, less than three, some members of the public and maybe even staff could participate remotely while there was also a meeting in the room. And that could be done using the town meeting format, but we'd all feel like we're in Hollywood Squares in separate boxes and not feel like we're in a room. There's better technology that would allow us to be a meeting room and then joined by people. So I can't today promise you could go to hybrid tomorrow, but we are going to work on that, and we're just delayed by the flood work, just so you know. And obviously I'll keep the board up to date with legislation as it happens. One would suppose there's a lot of legislation that does need to happen. In terms of the 186 Summer Ave, I've been involved in some of the emails, especially in one discussion with town council. And yesterday, again, the news out of the state changed whatever conclusions were true on Sunday, because the state of emergency has a great deal to do with permit applications. But I will point out that, as you mentioned, the board is a signator, but the HDC and the RHC are also signatories to a document over the property. And you have assigned Chris and Carlo to be liaisons for each of those. So I just want to caution the board about how many members start attending whatever meetings, because you have two liaisons that would cover that property. And if push ever comes to shove, whatever that means, the Historic District Commission has jurisdiction because that's in the district. But in terms of a specific document over the property, they have equal jurisdiction right now for that. So as we learn more, we'll certainly keep the board informed on that as well. I wanted to especially call out a thanks to moderator Alan Folds, certainly town clerk Laura Gem, and there was about a half a dozen to a dozen town staff and a couple of school staff that had to do an enormous amount of work for the town meeting. The benefit is many of you could sit home in your living rooms and enjoy it, but a remote town meeting is far more work than a meeting in person for us. And I just really want to especially thank Alan, who did come under some criticism because things weren't perfect, I guess. But honestly, respectfully, town meeting members need to be paying attention. Some of the comments he got were shocking in terms of, I was busy doing this, I was busy doing that, can I vote, can I change my vote? It's like, so he was frustrated, and I shared that with him, but I thought he did a terrific job. We keep an eye on other town meetings in the area, and Winchester's had a tough one, but most of the towns have had 1 to 2 hour town meetings. So it's interesting to compare and contrast. In terms of the Middlesex Ave, I'm working with town council and with Dan Bottenwinick. We're in some state of receiving an application from Dan. I don't really want to characterize it, so I'm not really sure whether it's complete, but he will need to come see the board, I'll say between now and early June, probably before the June 15th deadline. So at some point, I'll be polling you for availability for a separate meeting. In discussions with the chair, it's not something that's going to comfortably fit into one of your agendas, and it's probably something we need to prepare for significant public participation. So maybe more like a town meeting style Zoom. We're not sure yet, but we'll work on that. Next week, the chair and the vice chair, I hope to be able to invite you to an informal meeting. We still can't do that. There's still discussions going on. And then perhaps the week after that or the week after that one will be a select board meeting. And we'll certainly fill you in with more details as they develop. Congratulations to our colleague Gail Dowd. She was awarded the John Conway Distinguished Service Award, something that's well-deserved and very scarce, not given out easily and often. But Gail has been the glue that's done so many things in the school district related to COVID and not related to COVID. Aside from keeping the finances in order, which is no easy feat, she's led the the lunch program and been out there giving away lunches to families in every weather. So, a tip of the cap to Gail. She really does a terrific job. And I think that's all I have. I'll keep board members updated on the sort of the state of emergency and the May 29th mask date. For town hall, I've asked the Board of Health, who meets this Thursday, and I forget my wording, but it's to relax and remove any and all restraints on town and school buildings effective June 15th, which will then allow us to do normal operations when the state of emergency ends, just as kind of a belt and suspenders. As I walked around the building yesterday, we're still not ready to have people come in without appointments. Some of the furniture is in the way of hallways. It's not handicapped accessible right now. We're still recovering from a major flood. We did clean out the select board room to allow town meeting to happen there. So the moderator and the town clerk and a few others were in the room. And within less than a day after town meeting ended, it was junked up again because all the furniture from the FinCom room is now piled up in that room as FinCom room's being restored. And then offices below were damaged. So there's literally furniture all over the place. But, the public is welcome in the building. They've been welcome since maybe the end of last March, a year ago. Just call and make an appointment. It's not difficult. We see staff meeting people every day, frequently. Whether they're inside or outside. Some residents prefer to sit in the courtyard outside of town hall and do their business there, whatever's comfortable. When we do open to the public without restriction, legally, we have the right to have a mask requirement. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's something we may want to discuss with the board between now and the middle of June. So that's all I have. Thank you.
That's great. Carlo.
Thanks, Karen. Can I ask Bob a question?
Mhm.
Bob, thank you for that update. And to me personally, and I think we touched upon this last meeting or 2 meetings ago, I can't remember. I think the PAC in the high school makes much more sense for space issues, social distancing, and even with the positivity rate so low in our town and the state and everything else. But I think if we want to invite the public back, I don't think the room, even when it's fixed, people might be uncomfortable. So my question is, what permissions do we need to use the PAC or the library? Can we just use it, or do we have to work with the school?
We definitely have to work with the schools. I would say the PAC is probably not practical because if the schools are using it, but the Scatini Library on the high school is usually available certain nights of the week. And don't forget the A and B conference rooms in the library if we join them. So both the library and the schools have been very willing to welcome you back sometime a few months ago as needed. And you're right that those rooms are just so much bigger. And, there's no substitute for space right now for a lot of things. So, if the board wants to start meeting there on a regular basis as opposed to once in a while, I'll talk to both the superintendent and the library director and see what we can work out.
Yeah, thank you. I would love for Ann to be part of the conversation, but I would love to see us meet in person as soon as possible, but in our room, anytime soon, just because I don't know if the board agrees or disagrees, just for making people feel more comfortable and maybe us feeling more comfortable that we have some space. And then maybe the hybrid model of, someone could, residents can Zoom in and Zoom out, and town staff, because, there's a lot of meetings every night and it's a lot of work. So.
Yeah, and I'll have to come back to you on hybrid in other locations. That is a technology requirement. And actually, I asked Kevin Furla to ask the schools today if they could do that. I just don't know. So that may be something that both the library and the schools, library and the high school and the library need to prepare for. I'm sure we can have an in-person meeting anytime, but whether we can do hybrid in those rooms effectively, I don't know. I'll come back to you.
Does anyone know if the school committee's meeting in person yet?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So first, thanks, Carla, for bringing that up. I think it makes sense to be in a large room. I think I'll feel more comfortable. I think there'll be others that can feel more comfortable also. I think that's a really good idea. And the library conference rooms A and B, I believe, do have RCTV equipment in them. So, you know, that may be a possibility. I know that the Scatini Library clearly does too. So that would be great. Bob, I wanted to just add to your comments in terms of town meeting also. I think that it was very challenging this time through. And I think with a lot of patience, I think, you know, people did a nice job, but I think Alan is to be commended for the work that he did, and obviously others in supporting as well. But he ended up being in the hot seat because things aren't quite as straightforward as being in person. And I think he did a great job kind of managing that for everybody and getting through it. So thanks for bringing that up. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, excellent. Caitlin has updated me that we have a speaker waiting for public comment. So why don't we invite that person in? Peter, welcome. Can you hear us?
Peter, I think you're muted.
Here, I brought 'em up.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Sorry.
Yes, welcome, Peter. Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to speak on the CVS law pertaining to, I guess, your vote or whatever tonight.
Mhm.
I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I did read through some of the things that they had stated in regards to the 3 parking spots that are being asked to be taken. The last time 3 parking spots were taken in downtown Reading was about 20 years ago with the bank next door to Anton's. And at that time, I believe they paid $15,000 a spot to the town of Reading for the use of those spots so that they could put in their drive-through window, which that money was used to take down the old police station, which made the parking lot for the senior center. That deal was actually negotiated more by the business community than it was for the select people, by the selectmen at that time, select board. It's crazy to just give away 3 parking spots. I'm not against progress, but to just give away 3 parking spots, and I think in their presentation they said we don't have a parking problem. We do. They said that, you know, they would, you know, widen the entrance over there. Well, that's great, but we're also losing 2 more parking spaces, which I believe they probably own, but they're probably kicking out their building to the end of that property to make it bigger. So, I mean, that's kind of what they're doing. I'm just not in favor of giving away 3 parking spots for nothing. If in fact the town is going to give 3 parking spots away, they should be rewarded back. Now, I had spoken with, I think it was Mr. Haley, the new select board member. And I think he said in his study, new parking spots cost about $20,000 to $25,000 a space to create in downtown Reading. So, I mean, there's a good starting point if you're going to give them away. And that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, Peter. We really appreciate that. Thank you
All
for
right.
your time.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Okay, bye. Do we have anyone else, Caitlin?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad he made it in there. Okay, so next on our agenda is hearing number 1. So I understand the secretary would read our hearing notice for us. Oh, Bob, you have a question? Oh, you're muted.
Laura Gem would like to say a few words.
On the precincts.
So on my agenda, the hearing comes first. Did something get reordered?
I think Laura's at 7:35 and the hearing's at 7:45 on my agenda.
Yeah, 7:35 I had to.
Okay, something must have changed. Okay, I'm fine with me. I'll switch that around. Thanks. Laura, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Am I muted? Oh,
You're unmuted.
so I just wanted to touch the base real quick about the memo that was in your packet. The 2020 census, we'll have our final numbers in September, but up to that, we're going to use estimated numbers. And I met with, since this memo was issued, we had originally talked about possibly adding a 9th precinct, but since this memo was issued, I have met with town council, Bob and Matt and myself. And then I also spoke with the elections division on the state end. And it's basically up to you as the board, but at this point, it does not appear that we need to add another precinct. The elections division on the state level recommended that we keep it at 8 precincts, and that we next time we do a charter review, that we change our charter so that it states that we have 192 members equally divided amongst precincts. And it doesn't have the number of precincts, because in 2030, we will definitely have to add another one, and that way we won't run into a charter problem. But if we use the estimated numbers, we'll end up with approximately 2,300 residents per precinct, and we can't go over 4,000. So that seems to be a pretty good number that will be able to stay at 8. But we will have to definitely redistrict, reprecinct, redraw the precinct lines to even out the number of residents in each precinct. So precinct 5 will become a little bit smaller, and precinct 3 is another one that is close to the numbers. Does anybody have any questions?
Chris, I think I saw you first.
Thanks, Karen. Laura, does that mean that next election cycle, everything gets redone again because the precincts are getting restructured, or it stays the same?
Exactly. So what happens is in 2022, the town meeting is cleared. Actually, as of December 31st, town meeting is cleared, and then everybody has to rerun. And the top 8 vote getters ends up with a 3-year term, the next 8 2-year term, etc.
Okay, thanks.
Mark?
Thanks, Karen. Laura, if you're going to be changing some of the precincts, and it looks like we have to vote October 30th, when do you think you'll be coming to the board with recommendations?
So we're going to do all of the work ahead of time, so that when we get the final numbers, we won't get them until September 30th. But we have to have everything submitted by October 30th. So the vote has to happen sometime between October 1st and October 30th. So my recommendation would be the first meeting that you meet in October, that we do a vote, because that's a pretty tight deadline.
Great. And one other question related, the 192 members, so that's in the charter, correct?
Right now, the charter says that you have 24 members per precinct, and you have 8 precincts.
Okay.
So the recommendation is that you change it to 192 members, evenly distributed between the precincts, and you don't put a number of precincts in there.
Got it. Does if there would be 9 precincts, does 192 work to do it evenly?
I think 189 works. So you'd have to tinker with the language a little
Okay, so just thinking if we're gonna have to tinker, we should just
It's a
presume
good
that
question,
there's gonna be an issue that comes up at some point.
right? Or just maybe put it as an even number of even number of town meeting members per precinct, and don't put a number in there. I don't know if that would work. You'd have to have a total number.
We can have an up to number, right? Up to,
There you go, up
That would
to
be good.
192. That would work. That's something that the Charter Review Committee would have to work on to make sure that the language is legal and not include the only thing we have to make sure of is that we don't include the number of precincts.
Got it. And one other question, in terms of drawing boundaries and things like that, what's the process for those decisions? I know that it relates to numbers, but how do you decide this street, that street?
So the town is actually made up of blocks. The precinct has to include an entire block. So the precinct line has to go around those blocks itself. And on June 3rd, I'm sorry, we'll be meeting with the state and getting the blocks and the estimated numbers. So we'll take that and work with, and the precinct lines also have to be on a street or some sort of marker, like a river or something along those lines. They can't go through a home, that sort of thing, which we had actually happen one year, quite a few years back.
So you'll be working with Kim Heinrichslager and others on.
Yep. Kim will be doing, so on June 3rd, I'll be meeting with the state, getting the numbers and the maps. Kim will be doing most of the work at that point. And then I'll be, I'm basically the communication between Kim, the state, and the select board.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, everything Laura says assumes some changes in state law, which the elections division has said will happen. The census and this whole process is slower than it usually would be. So the deadlines next fall usually would be soon, in the next month or so. So the board is going to have a pretty condensed period of time where you have to redo this. And when you think logistically, every so often we need a special town meeting at odd times in the year. And you're not going to have a town meeting as of December 31st. You're going to have elections to populate a town meeting. So, it's really important, and we'll work pretty diligently with the state that what we submit to them is approvable. We'll work with them, and, we don't want to come up with something crazy that the state kicks back to us because we don't have a lot of time here. And, we normally wouldn't do that, but the board does not have as much time to deal with this as it normally would, is my only point.
I'm sorry, Karen, I just wanted to add to that Kim has done this. This will be the third time that Kim has done this. So she pretty much knows how to get everything ready so that the state approves it, and we're in good shape. I'm sorry, Karen.
That's okay. I'm just trying to figure out we're going to be looking at the charter review or reviewing the charter and putting together a committee. So this will be one of those items, or does this have to be an accelerated item?
This will be one of the items that goes on in preparation for 2030. 2030 will be the next time we have to do this, and we'll definitely have to add a 9th precinct with that because the numbers are already pretty,
Okay.
estimated numbers are already pretty close, but we'll be okay until 2030.
Yeah, and the elections division said there's sort of no consequence of going over the 4,000 for 2030, as long as you're setting in motion something to fix it by 2030. That was my concern. What if we're wrong? But it's okay.
Okay. And what do we need to vote on in the fall? We need an agenda item in October, you said?
Correct. It should be the first meeting in October. That's the hope. If we get everything done on our end on time, you'd be the first meeting in October. And what you're going to do is vote on the final precinct map that will be submitted to you ahead of time.
Okay.
And then once you vote on that, then it has to go to the local elections district review commission for them to vote on.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Thank you. Okay. All right.
So I do have one quick question. In the past, Kim and I worked on the map with taking into consideration the estimated numbers and the growth. We worked with Julie Mercier to get some of the growth estimates. And then we submitted the final version to the select board. My question to you is, would you want to see the map ahead of time with any kind of, discussion that we take in as we work through before you vote on the final? In other words, do you want to see our progress as we go along? That was a long-winded way to ask, do you want to see our progress as we go?
Carlo?
Thank you. Laura, I'm guessing the answer is no, but there's no public input on this matter, or even
That is
from us.
correct. That is correct.
Or even us. It's just
That
approve,
is,
approve, and
you have input as far as whether or not you want to approve it or don't approve it. If you don't approve it, then we have to go back and take the recommendations and hope that the local commission, elections commission will accept your changes. But so it's your map per se, but the public has no input.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Mark?
Thanks, Karen. So to that end, it may make sense to have some kind of a review before the day that it's going to get voted on.
Okay.
And whether that's done as the full board, or if we end up asking one or two people maybe to take a look, but maybe it's best just to come to the whole board, just to kind of let everybody take a look. So I would recommend before we see it, and have a discussion before the deadline that we have to vote on it.
So how about if I propose that once we get the map done with the estimated numbers, we'll show that to you. And then when we get the final numbers, we'll submit the final map.
That sounds great to me.
Great, thank you, Laura.
Okay.
Have fun.
All right, thanks.
Okay. All right, okay, so would we like to have a hearing now?
Sure.
Okay, Mark, may I ask you to do the honors?
Absolutely. To the inhabitants of the town of Reading, please take notice that the Select Board of the Town of Reading will hold a public hearing on May 18th, 2021 at 7:45 p.m. remotely on Zoom to approve the FY22 Select Board classification and compensation schedules. A copy of the proposed documents regarding these topics will be in the Select Board packet on the website at www.readingma.gov. All interested parties are invited to attend the hearing or may submit their comments in writing or by email prior to 4 p.m. on May 18th, 2021 to townmanager@ci.reading.ma.us by order of Robert W. LaLasher, Town Manager.
Thank you. Caitlin, do we have anyone who would like to speak up in this hearing?
There's some staff here, but no one from the public, no.
Okay. I don't recall seeing any input to the select board on this topic this week. Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen and show you the two charts?
Yes, sure. Thank you.
So here's the FY22 classification plan. You addressed this most recently sometime in the fall to add the health director position you see down here. The only change we're requesting for this hearing is removing the health agent. There'll be no need for that. I will note that town meeting did add a position, but they did it after this hearing was advertised, so I'm not allowed to add that position in at this time. So we will be back to see you in the next couple of months to add some mental health counseling positions for the coalition. So again, for this document, simply the only change is removing the health agent.
Got it.
For the compensation, these are all things we showed you last December and, kind of gone along in the budget process. Let me just enlarge it. The FY22 compensation plan has a 0.75% cost of living increase. So with successful performance evaluation, non-union employees are allowed a step, which is 2% plus a 0.75% COLA. And we did add and asked to add step 14, historically, a lot of library professionals that have been there a long time are stuck on step 13. So this was just another way to, get a little compensation for them, as well as a couple of department heads, as I recall. So this is what you saw December, adding another step. We're still one step short of what our peers typically do, but that's fine. And then a 0.75% COLA, again, for non-union. So that's really as simple as it is.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Mark?
Thanks, Karen. Bob, the 0.75% COLA is comparable to what union COLA is likely to be, or how does that get calculated? How do you come up with 0.75%?
It's a little difficult because the non-union number has to be decided early on in the budget process compared to union negotiations. So, hindsight's 2020. In October, this looked reasonable. By January, February, a 1% COLA could have easily been afforded. And we'll catch up as we need to for the non-union. But, I keep the two in mind. It's impossible to compare exactly because unions trade things off that non-union doesn't have to trade. I'd say Reading has historically done a really good job keeping union and non-union pretty close together.
Great. And do you folks feel, I see Sean on the call too. Hi, Sean. Does this keep us reasonably competitive such that we can kind of keep our treasured Reading resources?
That's a really hard question to answer. Sometime after the pandemic ends, it might be time, I hate to say it, but it might be time to do another pay and class study because all the rules are different. We are seeing peers hire people at $50,000 over the list price, if you will, in health, for instance. So it's a new world out there. Building inspectors, health personnel, engineers are all top dollar. And, some professions are resigning and retiring in large numbers, which is going to make replacement hard. A health director especially. We've seen a number of them retire in just the last 2 months. So the honest answer is, I don't know. I really don't know. We're always hiring. We're almost always interviewing. We interviewed yesterday, and compensation comes up more often than it used to. But so does working conditions. People don't come to Reading just for the pay. So, I think we're a good place to work still. I think we pay competitively. We've never advertised that we pay well, and we're not guilty of that usually. But if we pay in the median of our 25 communities, we've always been satisfied with that. As I said to some board members, that equation is not going to work forever. If you want top quartile performance, at some point, you're going to have to pay better. And whether you do it selectively, I know one town, and I think it was near Wellesley, but it wasn't Wellesley, you have to think about it. They actually had a formal discussion and came up with a list of jobs that they wanted to pay 50% of median, 75%, top 10%. So it was a conscious discussion. I've never seen that before. I think it was Wayland that did that 5-10 years ago. And, teachers were at the 75th percentile, police were at the top 10%. And that's a tough discussion to start differentiating jobs like that. But that's another approach, if you value certain things more than others. So we always aim at 50. We try to supplement the 50 with, a good work ethic and a good environment. And, historically, we've done okay, but it's hard to predict the future.
Thank you.
Very good. So if there are no public input at this point, should we close the public hearing? We need a vote for that, Mark?
Yep, I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, as I see you, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, Mark,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and Karen, yes.
Would you like a motion to approve the pay and classification recommendations?
I do. If we have no more comments, absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
I move to accept the pay and classification I call it chart?
I think you want to call it the classification and the compensation charts
Classification and compensation.
as
charts,
described.
as
Second,
described.
Second,
okay, as I see you, Mark,
Yes.
Carlo,
yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and Karen, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so now we are ready for Sharon, and she's ready for us. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Karen. I just wanted to start by welcoming Chris Haley to the board. This is my first select board meeting since your election. I just wanted to welcome you and say that I look forward to working with you. So as far as our quarterly report, I'm going to start with discussing the fiscal 20 audit. That was completed quite a while ago, and the financials were prepared and issued to us on February 26th. So we're waiting an audit committee meeting, and I was waiting to schedule that until I knew for sure that the liaison assignments were going to be what I knew that you guys were reorganizing. So expect to be getting an email regarding the audit committee meeting soon. The audit did go well, and there were no issues, and so it's just a routine meeting to go over the findings or the actual results of the audit. There was no findings, and just give an update so the liaison can kind of come back and give you guys an update as well. I'm going to go ahead. Am I allowed to share my screen, Bob?
Sure, I can share it also if you need
I
me.
actually have one document with everything in it, so I think I'll just,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
No.
Okay, so this is the general fund revenues, and I've highlighted some areas I'm going to touch on. So for this time of year, I ran this report on May 10th. For this time of year, I'd expect if all revenues were collected equally throughout the year, we'd be somewhere around 86 to 88% at this point. And so for most of these items, we are well above that, but there are these items that I've highlighted that are really trailing projection, and I just want to discuss those. But before I do that, I do want to point out that motor vehicle excise prior to the pandemic was about $4 million, and we brought it down to 3.6. And you can see that even though we're at 90.2% of projection, this is a number that was $400,000 less than what we were seeing before the pandemic. And I think that we will get there to the 3.6 number, but I don't think that we're going to see the regeneration numbers that line item has provided in years past. So I just wanted to point that out, even though it is well within the range of what my expectations would be, we have always seen some large numbers in motor vehicle excise for regeneration. So that's something just to prepare yourself for. It may come out that there are more regeneration numbers there than I'm going to expect, but to me, I feel like we're just going to barely get to the 3.6. Anyhow, moving on to payment in lieu of tax, that's at 60.5%. And I think every time I do this at the end of the year, that one looks very low, and it really is okay. And that is because in that number, payment in lieu of tax has RMLD's payment in lieu of tax. They pay twice a year. They pay in December and in June. And that payment coming in June is about $165,000. So that would cover the $151,000 that we haven't collected yet. So even though the number looks low, it's not quite as bad as it would seem. Fees is a little bit lagging, not much, but a little bit at 81.6. One of the issues we have within that is I left $130,000 projected for the compost parking sticker, and we opted not to sell those stickers during the pandemic. And I don't know that we would have sold any. Most people were working from home. So that number is trailing a little bit for that reason. Under the license and permits, what was the issue there? Alcoholic beverage licenses was trailing projection at just 56.10 collection. And I think that's largely to do with the pandemic. So many businesses were hit hard with that, not for the period of time that they weren't able to either be open or serve alcohol. So I would say that that's probably part of why we're seeing that number trail, and that should come back to us soon.
So Sharon, is that license fees, or is that related to consumption? Pardon the expression.
It's alcoholic beverages licenses. So I don't know that if some of these restaurants closed down, if we didn't sell as many licenses, I'm not sure how that works, but it just seems as if that number is much lower than what I've seen in past years.
So is that because of the action the board took specifically to give relief on the licenses?
Oh, yes, I do remember Caitlin having me do that. So yes, that's part of it as well. Yes, we did give relief. So that definitely is something that I didn't think of as I was looking at this. So thank you for reminding me of that. So that's definitely why. But still, we're not in bad shape because we are at 96% collection of our projected revenues. But I'm just kind of reviewing kind of the numbers that are a little low so that we're kind of aware when we're projecting in future years, kind of that we might still be recovering some of these revenues that we've lost during the pandemic. Fines and, actually, where was I? We did licenses and permits. Federal revenue is not low. It's actually very high. I wanted to just address that. In fiscal 20, we had a lot of COVID expenses that remained in the general fund, largely to do with net school spending for the school. And we discussed this with Melanson and Heath. It was going to affect our numbers in net school spending. So much money was directed toward COVID expenses. And if we moved them all to a grant, it was going to affect what the numbers look like. And they agreed that it made sense to leave them where they were, but they did say that when you get the reimbursement for CARES on these expenses that we chose to leave in the general fund, that you need to put the revenue in the general fund. So it ends up being an infusion to free cash. But in this case, it actually is helping us quite a bit with some of the line items where we are struggling revenue wise. So it actually worked out favorably for us that this took place in this way, because we've got all this unbudgeted revenue coming in from the CARES grant that had to go here because the expenses went here in fiscal 20. And so that actually helped us in some of the shortfalls on the lines that I'm going over. As far as state revenue, at this point when I ran the report, we were at 74.5%, but the April, we do receive our payments from the state monthly at the end of the month. And so when I ran this report, the April payment had not been posted. And then we have May and June. So we get about $1.2 million each month from the state. So that should cover what we're missing in terms of projected revenue. And we should be right about where we projected once all is said and done and all those payments have been received. So it's just kind of a timing thing. When we ran this report on May 10th, so I could get it out to you, that payment for April hadn't posted yet.
Sharon, can I ask you a quick question? Getting back to federal revenue, is there a one-to-one match between the increased pandemic-related expenses and the CARES grant? Like, are they all? Is this coming through in reimbursement, or were we just awarded a figure and it will absolutely cover a lot of expenses?
So with all the COVID expenses, they were a split between FEMA and CARES, depending on what kind of expense we're talking about. Things related to the school were largely not covered by FEMA. So most of that is all CARES. And this was the concern about moving the expenses away from the general fund, was our net school spending. So much money was redirected towards COVID related expenses. And so this is a portion of our first CARES reimbursement related to what we left in the general fund. So I had to go through and figure out how much did I put actually to the grant and how much did I leave in the general fund, and figure out how much of the reimbursement that I received goes in the general fund and how much actually goes into the grant, because we keep them separate. So this was just based on a lot of data that I had to kind of separate out. And I think I hid the columns when I sent you guys the detailed information of what we've spent so far. Because it just made it so tiny that you wouldn't have been able to read it. So, and I didn't think it was all that important for you to see. It was more for me to figure out, where do I put this money as it comes in? Okay, does that help?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Moving on, fines and forfeits. Those are down, and that's due to decreased revenue in dog license. I don't know if you call it tickets or fees, parking, and civil infractions. All of those receipts are down. And so that's why that number is so low.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Does that mean that we need to catch up on, did we eliminate the requirement to do dog licensing like during the pandemic?
No. I mean, I think at this point, it's usually done around this time of year for the dog licenses. So, and I've been talking with Laura and we are working on getting them out. But it is, all of them are kind of, if you look at them as a percentage of what we budgeted, they're both all trailing what I would expect, but that doesn't necessarily mean that revenues are collected equally throughout the year. Some things are very seasonal and we collect a lot of it at the end. And dog licenses and those late fees related to them tend to go May and June. So in talking to Laura, it's not that atypical to have it at the end of the year not be quite a projection. So.
Okay, just judging by the number of pandemic dogs and new family members, like those numbers should not.
We'd have a lot of revenues, yeah. But there's definitely going to be a lot of late fees for people who don't have their dog licensed for the year, and that's going to be going out soon.
Okay, thank you.
So earnings on investments, we reduced this number so much, and yet the numbers went down so much more than we expected. So earnings on investments is basically our either earnings on actual investments or interest returns. And we were getting somewhere in the area prior to the pandemic of 2% on our investments. And we're down to like 0.25% currently. So it really took a slide. And so this number is definitely trailing projections and something to consider when we're projecting our revenues going forward. And the last one highlighted here is other support non-enterprise, and that 50,000 that's still outstanding is coming from 2 revolving funds from the school department. And I don't normally record those entries until the end of the year, until Gail tells me that, yes, I have enough money in these revolving funds to do this. And from what I've heard, I got an email from her. I just haven't recorded it. We are okay, and we will get that 50,000 into the general fund. So that's just where we are general fund wise for revenue. So I don't anticipate that we'll have any revenue deficits, but I did feel the need to kind of go into kind of where we've seen some kind of slow revenues, just so you're aware.
Did we talk about the, at one point, Bob mentioned the fact that the extra restaurant fees that we collect were on hold at the state. Have they released those fees to us? The meals tax, excuse me.
Meals tax has been on target. So actually, the meals tax falls under this other excise taxes, and we budgeted it low at 250,000, considering that we thought that a lot of restaurants and businesses would be struggling, and we've received 325,000 thus far. So it's actually over projection. So it's a helper, but it's outside of what we expected. We expected that to be an area where we'd be trailing. So.
Thank you.
Sharon, can I share a quick question on, so if we're at 96% now, do you anticipate that we'll be over the top in another few months? Yeah,
I think we'll have some level of regeneration, but hard to say how much, because so many areas are trailing. And motor vehicle excise has always been such a big source of our regeneration on the revenue side, and where I'm seeing it so slow this year coming in, it's hard to know how much regeneration. I feel fairly comfortable we're going to get to what we've projected and maybe a little bit more, but it's too early for me to say how much more. I mean, I don't think it's going to be what our typical year looks like. We've always seen some really nice regeneration numbers on both the revenue and expense side. I'm not expecting them to be nearly as high as what we've seen in the last, several years prior to the pandemic. Okay, moving on. Next couple pages. Now, this is the general fund expenses, and I ran this in summary format. Otherwise, the report would be very, very large. And I ran it by department and by category, because most of our departments are voted at town meeting as salary and expense. Some of them are not salary and expense, like facilities, snow and ice, street lighting, all of that. But this is the best way I could show it to you in the smallest report I could produce to give you a feel for where we're at. And so I tend to look at this more detailed than what you're seeing here, but just in general, I look at the percentages and determine if I'm worried that we're going to have any shortfall to budget, or that not shortfall, overage to budget. And one area that we did have an issue that went to town meeting recently, the entry has not been recorded, is under this DPW, trash, snow, street lighting. Those are 3 separate lines at town meeting. So it looks like it's okay at 94.3%, but actually behind the scenes, the snow and ice number was about $48,000 in deficit. And at April town meeting, we asked for the 50,000. So once I record that entry, we should be good. Facilities is another area where I run it as salary and expense, but they're bottom line. But I run it this way because it's just the easiest way to show it to you guys. But you can see that there's no real concern in most areas that we're going to go over. And we're doing this kind of regularly anyway, just to prepare for town meeting as well, just to make sure that if there's a need to ask for money, that we do that. So all of these areas, obviously debt, we're pretty much all done with our debt payments. So it's at a high percentage, but I can see that we're okay. The one number that was in a negative position, the regional school assessments, we asked for 35,000 at town meeting. That entry has not been recorded. So we're just fine there. So that's the general fund expenses, and it's just a quick review just to see what our percentages look like and gain some comfort that we are not looking at anything that's going to be over. So moving on to the enterprise funds. The enterprise funds, starting with water, this is the revenues, is at 103.8. So we've already collected all the projected revenues. So we're now working on regeneration here in the water fund. But I did highlight that the earnings on investments, as I mentioned before, are definitely suffering this year compared to what we've seen in the past. And that's because of the low interest rates that we're seeing at this point. But no concern in terms of having a deficit revenue wise. This is sewer at 110.7. Again, I highlight the earnings on investments as I just mentioned, but everything else is doing just fine. Stormwater is at 102.3. Again, earnings on investments is going to be across the board, but I highlight it just so I don't forget that it's an issue in every area. Oh, I moved on to the CARES before I went to the... Sorry, I put this in the wrong order. Here we are. This is the expenses for the water, sewer, and stormwater, just summarized by category so we can look at it in a very quick fashion. The one thing that I noticed in water was that our capital was at a very low percentage. Around this time of year, I reach out to all the department heads and I run the reports for their capital. Just to remind them, hey, make sure that you get this encumbered or expensed by the end of the year, or it's going to go back to free cash. And I did that for water, sewer, and stormwater. And most of the time I'm reaching out to Jane and Brian Percival. After I had done that, after I'd run this report, just yesterday I looked and water was at 90% expended or encumbered. So they got their work done to get those things either held or expended. So they either process bills or they process a purchase order because they've assigned or awarded a contract. So each one of them, water, sewer, both had some issues where the number looked a little low, and I wanted to make sure that they didn't leave this excess on the table. And now looking at those numbers, they're over 80% for the sewer funds. So they're definitely taking note and making sure they don't forget about any of their projects that they had requested. Debt service in the sewer fund, we have two payments that are going out in May, one for $26,000 and then in June, another one for $275,000. So even though this looks like the percentage is really low, it's because of the timing of the debt payments related to sewer. And nothing to report there for stormwater. Everything looked pretty normal there. I'm gonna have to go back up to go over CARES. Here we are. So this is the CARES grant. We actually were awarded $2,233,905 in total funding. The first submission was, I think we were awarded sometime in March, and the first submission was in June, like mid-June that year, so that people could get funding by the end of that first fiscal year. We were not in need of the funding. We had asked for money from FinCom, and it was kind of a really quick application to get in. So I forwent that because we weren't in the need for, we need the cash right this second, where a lot of people did. So I didn't do a first submission, but the second submission, we had $895,207 that was related to the CARES grant. Now, under that first submission, that second submission, which is our first submission, there was a lot of assumptions in the application itself about FEMA covering 75%. And so many of these items were covered at 25% by CARES. But recently we did receive our first submission from FEMA with some rejections. And you can see that below, 182,977 was rejected from our first FEMA reimbursement. So those will be covered by the CARES grant. So on the next reimbursement that we put through in June, I will put those through, and hopefully we'll get the second reimbursement from FEMA addressed, and they can tell us what things they plan not to cover, and we can get the money back from CARES. So they're kind of working together, which makes it more than a little bit confusing. And I feel like the rules keep changing, but we're trying to keep track of it the best we can. The third submission was $256,457. So we have $1,082,241 remaining of CARES funds. And the items listed below are the things I know of right at this point that are going to go on that next submission. There are also things that I know that I have to be looking for to put on that next submission. And there are things that have been outstanding for a little bit. The first being unbudgeted unemployment cost. The pandemic caused a lot of unemployment throughout the country, and the CARES grant will cover anything above and beyond what your typical budget would have been. But we're seeing our unemployment bills are outrageous. There's so much fraud on the bill. And so I met with somebody from unemployment, or talked to them on the phone with our HR director, and got some advice about how to pay this bill, because we haven't been paying the bill because they've given us till June 30th to pay the bill. But I'm like, do I have to pay the number with all the fraud? Because I know that we've reported fraud on a lot of these line items. And they told us, no, you can back out all the fraud, but this is such a long report. So we have to get to the number of what is truly due for unemployment and how much of the bill is actually fraudulent. So I'm working with the HR director to get down to that number. That is something that will go on that fourth submission as well. Legal costs. Sometimes these COVID-related legal costs are mixed in our legal bill that we get monthly from Ramier's office. So I'll have to look at the bills or get a number from Bob. Bob does a great job of detailing what each bill has on it, and he usually will give me, this is how much was COVID related, but it's all commingled in one bill, and it usually goes to the legal expense. So it's not easy for me to just pick a number out of an account, because he's putting it where he normally would put it. So things like that. So I think and feel pretty comfortable that we will use a large portion of the CARES grant, if not all of it. And I'm probably going to request during the submission for the rest of the money. And if there's unused money, I'll send it back, because that's what they were mentioning today on a call that I was on, was that submission that's due in June, they want you to kind of project out what you can spend through December 31st, because this grant goes through December 31st, 2021. So I'll probably request all the money. And then in the end, if we don't spend it all, I'll send back what we owe them back. So that's the way we'll have to deal with it. It has been a lot because the rules have been changing. So hopefully we can keep this all straight. The FEMA grant, the CARES grant, we're moving things around between two different grants just to figure out, okay, this one's paying us, this one's not paying us. And so these expenses are going to be really hard to track. So I've been tracking everything by just regular Excel and moving them around in Munis as I know. So it is crazy messy. And the reports I gave you was just a detailing of the first submission, what we actually put through for reimbursement. And you can kind of see that this first section here is 100% CARES, and it's because FEMA does not cover anything for this section. Would have been for remote work, accelerating remote work. They didn't cover anything. So 100% went to the CARES grant. So I don't have to worry. Those are actually all on the CARES grant. But the ones where I say FEMA, yes, even the state thought that FEMA would cover all these things. Good chance I'm going to have to take that 75% I expected from FEMA and put it on CARES. So it's going to be a long process, and hopefully we can get it all right. But this is just the detail of the reporting that I did to them for reporting number 2 and then reporting number 3. So if you look at the end, it shows you that in that first reporting cycle, we spent almost 1.4 million, and we expected almost 900,000 to come from CARES and almost $500,000 to come from FEMA. Now I'm worried that number isn't right for FEMA. So it's, as we got these rejections, we'll know more. So that's where we're at. And then if you look at the CARES round 3, I break it down at the bottom, how much. This was a 283,000 in expenses and 256 is CARES and 26,000 I expected FEMA. So during this round, the report to the state seemed to assume, and based on the literature I was giving, that FEMA was not going to cover most things. And so this one's going to have less where I'm going to get rejection because we expected less from FEMA. So hopefully we can maximize all of the federal money that's coming our way. And I've got a meeting on Thursday related to the new federal funding that's coming out our way. So it's an ever-moving target of all this different federal money coming our way, and we want to make sure we capitalize on all of it or as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And that's all I have.
Board members, any questions? Chris?
Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Sharon. I definitely look forward to working with you as well. And thank you for putting all that together. In terms of the fraud that you mentioned, is that Reading residents committing unemployment fraud, or like how is that generalized?
So our Reading employees, somebody is filing an unemployment claim on their behalf and saying that they're them so it's not the employee at all. So I actually got one just as the pandemic started. I got a letter from unemployment saying my unemployment claim had been approved.
Congratulations.
So I immediately contacted unemployment and notified them that they had a fraud and they hadn't paid 1 cent to whoever did it. And so it never appeared on our bill. But for others, if they didn't get a letter or were not prompted right on the onset that this is a fraudulent claim, in the end, somebody did get money for it. I mean, I have a person in my office who got a tax form from unemployment for payments that were made to somebody else in her name. So, so there's quite a bit of fraud. And then when we were doing our mortgage relief program under the CARES Act, I had spoke to so many people who were unemployed and that there'd been a fraudulent claim prior to them being unemployed. And it was holding up them getting unemployment because there was fraud marked on their Social Security number for unemployment. So it's a very big problem, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country. And so every time we see one that we know for sure the employee did not file, we report it to them. But because it's so big of a problem, they're not able to eliminate them off the bill quickly. And so we've got to kind of come up with a number of what's really due to unemployment, because we got to pay them by June 30th. And no matter how many times you report, they remain on the bill because it takes a lot of time for them to correct it. So it's not fraudulent that in that it's residents, it's actually our employees having claims put in on their name.
And I did notice the 30 laptops from Dell or whatever for 17 grand that was on there. I expected that to be higher, but in actuality, it really is lower than what I would be getting them for clients for and whatnot. So it's refreshing. It's refreshing to see something that I would expected it to have been like 34 grand, or you guys spent 1,500 on each laptop. So yeah, it's good to see that that's well in line. So
anything related to the schools, and that could have very well been school related, is probably going to be cheaper than what you and I could pay anyway, but also not reimbursable under FEMA at all, 100% CARES, which is easier actually, because then I don't have to go back and try and collect the 75% we were hoping to get from FEMA when they say no.
Yeah.
So.
All right, thank you.
Any other board members? Sharon, I appreciate you working through all of that with us. I think this is the first time we've seen really some of these expenses and really in total and understood. So what does a pandemic cost? And now we have a better idea.
I mean, that's just the CARES grant. The schools, got their own grants. There's so much more money that's out there. I mean, it's just the FEMA and the CARES that I presented to you. But if we were to look at what the schools have gotten, I mean, it cost a lot to get through a pandemic is what I can gather, because they've put a lot of federal funding our way.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate this.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great night. Okay, and so are we ready for Aaron, an economic update? Sorry, economic development update. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Can I screen share?
Yeah.
Just transitioning over here. Can everyone see the slides okay?
Yes.
Great. So thank you for having me. Tonight I prepared a 5 minutes of remarks, and any additional details have been highlighted in the board packet for you. Tonight I wanted to introduce myself for those that you don't for those of you who don't know me. My name is Erin Schaefer. I'm the Economic Development Director, and I've been with the town for about 2 years now. The Economic Development Division provides professional technical work advancing the town's economic development strategies and goals. I always get the question about what is economic development, and I'd like to say that it's the process of proactively helping to create and sustain wealth in the community. In Reading, our approach is three-pronged. Together, we work to keep downtown vital, preserve what's important, and proactively position the town to be queued up for opportunities. The image here is a visualization of the town's economic development action plan and goals and strategies and objectives for the town. And you can find more information about the economic development action plan on the town's website on the economic development page. The key to our success is that the division consistently works with town interdepartmental colleagues, community stakeholders, and regional and state economic development partners to plan and implement these goals. And I do want to thank and acknowledge everyone for the tremendous work that we've all done and continue to do together to help our Reading community recover and thrive. Just wanted to show quickly a couple of recent developments in the downtown 40R Smart Growth District. And I really want to say that the town of Reading is a really vibrant community that continues to attract high quality development, and this development keeps downtown vital. And in keeping downtown vital, I also wanted to highlight a few key initiatives that we're working on. Didn't want to provide a huge exhaustive list. This is just to highlight a few. We have an outdoor dining bistro table program, which you've probably seen, that was expanded this year at 30 Haven Street. Our planning department worked hard on an outdoor commerce dining program and storage zoning update. This applies to all businesses in town and has been a big benefit for downtown businesses as well. We're also working with a private group of property owners, businesses, and residents to try to create a business improvement district. That business improvement district will work together to fund, initiate, and manage supplemental programs and services for downtown that really benefits everyone who uses the downtown. We're working on a local rapid recovery planning effort, and parking management I know is a key topic. And we are looking forward to the select board appointing members to the park committee to move this initiative forward. I also wanted to highlight here some grants. Again, many of our town departments have applied for and received grants, and it's a lot of the work that we do. What I wanted to highlight here were grants that were received by the Planning and Economic Development Division the last year or so. And for more information, particularly about these initiatives that were grant funded, and also about the micro enterprise COVID relief grants for local businesses, you can find more information on the economic development webpage. Like the town of Reading, like so many other communities, has been significantly impacted by COVID. But I do want to say the local economic outlook is positive due to a resilient business community that we have worked closely with to collaborate, plan, and assist. Together, our work has positioned the community to be more economically stable, and federal and state funding, as you saw in the previous presentation, has significantly supported our local economy, not only for the town, but also for our local businesses. Though some businesses have closed due to changes in consumer behavior over time and the pandemic, Reading continues to have significant and ongoing investment. As we look ahead to focus on recovery efforts, strengthened partnerships remain vital to the work ahead. And I also wanted to say that there are a lot of resources for businesses on the website, and I'm always happy to be a resource. So I'm really excited that we have 10 new businesses and a few more on the way, which I'm really excited about. And I also wanted to highlight a collaborative partnership with the Reading and North Reading Chamber called Shop the Readings, which is a marketing program, a new collaborative initiative that will highlight all of Reading businesses and North Reading's businesses. And I want to say that if you are a business out there and would like to add your business to this free listing, the website is available on this page. It's https://shopthereadings.com/login/. Again, I'm happy to be a connector, and you will see this Shop the Readings campaign get started soon. So I'm very excited about that. And for customers out there, I do want to thank everyone who's been shopping locally. It's made a very big difference in our town. I do want to say that shopping locally is important for a thriving local economy. When you spend about $100 locally, about $68 stays in town because local businesses hire local services and suppliers. Also, businesses provide local jobs, taxes, and local businesses are known for providing extensive community donations. So it's really important to continue shopping local. And for my last slide, I also want to show that Reading is continuously working to be queued up for opportunities, and we're looking forward to working collaboratively with interdepartmental colleagues, community stakeholders, and regional and state economic development partners to review next steps on a variety of initiatives. So the initiatives that we're looking forward to, this is not an exhaustive list, we have a lot more. A couple of highlights are decorative downtown lighting installation, downtown streetscape and municipal parking lot improvements, Eastern Gateway and Walker's Brook Drive corridor and intersection next steps, and potentially partnering with the future downtown improvement district. So with that, I'd like to stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Board members. Chris.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Aaron, as well. So on that one slide where it said 10 new businesses, is that Reading and North Reading combined or just Reading itself?
Yeah, so it's just the town of Reading.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Mark.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Aaron. Great stuff in the deck, as well as appreciate the presentation, just to highlight some things too. I'm wondering if can you keep us updated as things progress, like Eastern Gateway. We had a meeting a year ago, I guess, on some proposals for the Walker's Brook, kind of Eaton Lakeview area, and a number of ideas. And just kind of, I'm not sure the best way to keep track of those in terms of where they're headed and how it's going. And can I just ask, it'd be great to have you come back to us, on a somewhat regular basis, not all the time, but somewhat regular basis, with updates and kind of next steps on some of those projects. I know, for example, the Walker's Brook, it was kind of a wish list, more so than a, okay, let's do A, B, and C. But I don't know how that's going to progress, and would love to know as that's happening to kind of keep us in the loop.
Sure, I can work with Bob on that to keep folks in the loop. Now we're looking forward to a visioning process in the fall, both continued visioning in the Walker's Brook area as well as our downtown 40-hour smart growth district, and we can certainly be back probably in the fall. Makes sense, fall or winter, with additional updates.
Awesome, thank you.
Chris.
Thank you, Karen. In terms of, I ended up speaking with Lisa last week from the chamber and whatnot. And I think the biggest thing for the Shop the Readings is businesses actually have to register to be on there, beyond what she's going to already input herself. So definitely any businesses that are out there should be registering on this, hopefully going forward. Because like you mentioned, the 10 new businesses, I personally could name like 3. So I'd like to know what the other 7 are. if there's something we can do to actively advertise or something like that, because I don't even know where the other ones are, other than Postmark, Drew Stew's guy, and the other person underneath me over here. I don't even know where the other ones are going to be going. So if I don't, I'd like other people to at least know that, because then it's just better for everybody involved. So
Thank you.
definitely register on that website.
Carlo?
Thank you. Aaron, are you in any kind of way in touch with the property owner in a general way? There's a lot of big spaces over there that could be for entertainment, you know, whether it's a fun zone, or we've talked about axe throwing before, and other activities just to bring more families in town. I know it's a private owner, but do you guys speak at all and try to generate or talk about uses, potential uses?
Yeah, I can answer that because George approaches me, I don't know, a couple times a year at least. He actually approached us during the winter, maybe January or so, with his own proposal going forward in draft form. You know, don't cringe when you hear it, but he's now interested in the housing boom. So it's a nice commercial space, but you know, he's obviously aware of what's going on, and he wondered if he could put housing up on top of his building. So, you know, we are in touch. He's a good fellow. We've been in touch for many years. You know, he's thrown some possible roadway improvements at us that I've been honest with him. I don't think the town is going to go for it. You know, he wants to extend a road near the drugstore to go through a residential lot to come into his property. And I just said, I don't think that's going to work. So, you know, we are involved in back and forth. He did almost have the, I guess, hammer throwing beer license organization come to town, but they decided to go somewhere else. We were looking forward to that. And there was almost a golf, indoor golf organization, virtual golf, that used his property. So he's always interested in crazy ideas. He's pretty good at it. And if you remember back, I guess it was just about this time last year, he was talking to one of our residents for having I'll say an all-day school, virtual school, in conjunction with the Reading Public Schools, where the old athletic club was. And we did a lot of work on that. So he's an approachable guy. He's an engaging guy. He used to like to spend more time in Greece than he's been allowed to lately. So he has come up with more ideas. You know, if you have any ideas, you're always welcome to shoot me an email. I'll connect you to. He's very approachable.
I have an idea better than housing that won't impact our infrastructure, which is a hotel. I would love to see a hotel in Reading, because they would patronize the businesses, and they don't live here. So even better.
You know, it's funny. I've never understood why a hotel works in Woburn but doesn't work in Reading. Because it's not that far different.
It would work. It would work.
Yeah. Okay.
Aaron, I also wanted to echo Mark's comment earlier. I really, really appreciate the effort into the extensive deck that you put in front of us, full of great stuff. Also, you get the prize tonight for the most colorful presentation to wake up a bunch of select board members, because most of our presentations are black and white, a really small font. So thank you. It's good to throw that in there occasionally. And I'm very excited if you're getting a good response on this bid initiative, because I realize people have to be wanting to do it, and they've got to need to step forward. And Carlo mentioned earlier, if we're going to have a farmer's market, we're going to need someone else besides staff to do it. So that's very encouraging. Do you have a sense of a timeline around which it might coalesce and become a thing?
Yeah, so what I can say is that the bid steering committee is and the bid process and initiative is really a private initiative. It was initially grant funded and seed funded by the town through grants. So we did provide some technical assistance to apply for grants, which you saw reflected in my slides. The bid steering committee is currently meeting and we're working through their work plan, fee structure, boundaries, and things of that nature. And I think over the next few weeks, you'll see more information as the bid steering committee formalizes their work plan and petition. So take a look and just be aware that that process is happening and moving forward, and you'll hear more from the bid steering committee itself in a few weeks with more information.
That would be wonderful. And I just wanted to commend you all. It looks like all through the grants in the last year, there were $240,000 funneled back into the business communities almost directly between this seed money grant for the bid process and $210,000 going to microloans. So that's amazing. And the entire staff should be commended. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have one more question?
I'm all set, Karen. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. We're so great to see you tonight, Erin. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, are we to our next hearing?
Indeed, you ready?
I'm ready.
To the inhabitants of the town of Reading, please take notice that the Select Board of the town of Reading will hold a public hearing on May 18th, 2021 at 8:40 p.m. remotely on Zoom to vote on Amendment 2021-2 to the Traffic and Parking Regulations, official placement of an isolated stop sign on Wakefield Street at Haverhill Street. A copy of the proposed documents regarding these topics will be in the Select Board packet on the website at www.readingma.gov. All interested parties are invited to attend the hearing or may submit their comments in writing or by email prior to 4 p.m. on May 18th, 2021 to townmanager@ci.reading.ma.us by order of Robert W. LeLasher, Town Manager.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
Caitlin, do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak?
No.
Okay. Officer Scouten, thank you for joining us. I think you might be on mute.
Yep, yeah, check yourself.
Okay. Okay. So would we like our guests to then just briefly talk about this particular proposal?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, we welcome you to take the floor, Christina or Michael.
Thank you, Karen. Officer Scouten has just a small presentation to show you what we are requesting today, so I'll let him take it.
You're on mute, Mike, you're on mute. Still can't hear you.
That's okay. I can handle it if, I don't know if Bob still has the presentation. If not, it'll just take me a minute to pull it up.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oops,
Yes,
not-
we can hear you now. Great.
Mike,
Had a
you want me to share the screen, Mike?
Yes, please. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
And to put on my fancy earmuffs here.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Everybody can see it?
Yep, all set.
Okay. So this came through from resident concerns in the neighborhood. They were looking to put a stop sign at the intersection of Wakefield and Haverhill Street. So we put it on the PTTF agenda, and we had a discussion, and we talked with engineering, and we did a study of the intersection itself, and it came to find that it does fit the criteria. for a stop sign. I just had a before and an after photo here. Sorry for the low quality. I took it off of Google on the left there. It's been updated. The intersection's been updated with 88 compliant ramps. It has a new crosswalk, as you can see. So everything kind of fits that should have a stop sign associated with it. So we just kind of looked into the MUTC. I'm just going to go to the next slide, Bob, please. Under the, we looked at the manual uniform traffic control devices, the MUTCD regulations under the Federal Highway Administration. And, the stop sign, as it indicates, should be used in the intersections if one or more of the following conditions exist. And it does. The first condition there, where Wakefield Street is a lesser important roadway that steps out onto a more major road, which is Haverhill Street. If you could just jump to the next slide, Bob, please. Nope. Yep. So the use of a stop sign, minor streets approach should be considered. Engineering judgment indicates stop always should be required because of the following conditions. So really the catch is the first condition that we found. The vehicle traffic volumes on the through street or highway exceeds 6,000 vehicles per day. And I did some studies and it supersedes that triple fold. If you could just jump to the next slide, Bob, please. So this is Haverhill Street heading southbound, and you can see some of the volumes on the right there. This is one direction on Haverhill Street. And if you could just jump to the next slide. And this is the northbound. So you're upwards of, different days could be 14,000 vehicles that just supersede that intersection completely. And just one more slide, please. And here's Wakefield Street that enters as well, which isn't even really, it's not even a real factor because the numbers are so high on Haverhill Street. So with all these volumes on the roadway, we really would like to see, the stop there, stepping out off of Wakefield onto Haverhill Street due to these high volumes of traffic. So that's the last of my presentation. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free.
And board members, Carlo.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And was there a stop sign previously, or are there other stop signs on Timberneck and the other streets, or this is more of a high volume street?
This is more of a high volume street. So I looked at some of the numbers. Timberneck was not considered, was under 1,000, pretty far under 1,000, but Wakefield Street, the numbers are pretty competitive with Franklin. That's further north, it steps off. There's probably about 1,500 to 2,000 cars more on Franklin Street, but Wakefield is definitely a heavily traveled roadway that connects, that's a through street that connects over to Pearl and then eventually over to Main Street. But the numbers are a little surprising, but it's definitely a heavily traveled side road that steps onto a very heavy traveled roadway.
Yeah, I agree. It is. I have friends over there and that I visit, but it is a very busy street. Yes.
And nothing was in the regulations and nothing that I'm aware of that there was ever a stop sign there previous in the past. And that crosswalk is new with those ramps. So there was never even a crosswalk there previous that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Other board members? Chris?
Thanks, Karen. Real quick, is there a downside to actually putting a stop sign there? Like, it seems like only a positive other than cars backing up. I mean, what would be the downside to doing it?
Honestly, I don't see a downside. I mean, cars that stopping, if the traffic's so heavy, they got to be stopping to take lefts. And honestly, if they take that extra second at the stop, the sight lines are nice. The sight lines are good there, but that extra second to stop and, not roll through that stop sign, I can't really see a negative to it, honestly. And honestly, I was looking at some of the crash data about a month ago. there was a bicycle versus vehicle at that intersection. And I forgot to mention that there is bike lanes on Haverhill Street as well. So there's a lot of bike traffic on that roadway. So that's another thought. I honestly don't see a downside. I don't see cars really queuing on Wakefield Street. I think it's going to be the same time frame. If a car has to stop, they stop. But I think it's just a safer, especially with the crosswalk that's associated with it now.
Right, I agree, Mike. There's no negative side. At PTTF, we just try to make sure that we only bring requests that fit the manual traffic uniform code, that we don't ask you to put up stop signs that don't warrant it and where they shouldn't be, that would actually cause more damage and crashes. But the stop sign will help the police. We can enforce people that aren't stopping completely and checking all, right and left before they're going out on the road.
And sometimes stop signs are more helpful for people that just happen through the area that aren't aware. Residents and people who use the roads regularly are going to know to stop, but there's other users of these roads.
Thank you.
Great. Works for me. Okay, if we have no other comments, should we close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Carlo. Okay, as I see you, board members, Mark,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
and Karen, yes.
Would you like a motion on the amendment?
I would love a motion on, yes, the amendment. Is it amendment? I would like a motion.
Yeah.
Can you give me a motion? Thank you.
Move to approve the amendment to the traffic and parking regulations of the town of Reading, number 2021-2, as written.
Okay. You seconding that, Carlo?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Okay. So members, on this amendment, as I see you, Mark,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
and Karen, yes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks.
Appreciate you explaining that to us. Great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you, you too.
Okay. Okay. So is 8:54. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Does that sound good? Okay. Phil, can you set a 5-minute timer and we'll be back?
That's hard for Phil. It's harder for us.
Okay. I know.
9 o'clock sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So 9 o'clock. All right. See you then.
Yes.
Okay. Caitlin, do we have someone who would like to speak on this? Okay, wonderful.
Maybe I should start with just a couple of remarks also as Josh is getting queued up. Again, this is not a hearing. This is an informal discussion, I guess I'll say.
Mhm.
The board may have any, any questions, any opinions they want. Should this proceed further, it would go to a noticed public hearing. The town did notify abutters as if it were a hearing, but just so you know, it's not a hearing. So there are no votes planned for this evening, nor allowed.
Okay, so just to confirm, the abutters were notified in addition to any notification they would have gotten relative to the CPDC hearing, or is that the same notification you're talking about?
Why don't you answer, Julie? You did it all.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, yeah, sure, I can answer that. So we notified the property owners and business owners that are on the block that's bounded by Woburn Street, Lowell Street, Main Street, Haven Street, and Sanborn Street. So the surrounding the municipal lot. We did not send out a mailing like we normally would to property owners within 300 feet. But that would certainly follow if you have a public hearing.
Okay, but they received, I'm going to be really clear after last summer, they received in-mail notification that we were going to be discussing this?
No, they received an email.
They received an email.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to let other board members, let me step back. Let me welcome you, Josh, and welcome you, Mr. Federa. I appreciate you coming this evening. Maybe the first step would be to let you just talk briefly about your project or add any additional information. We appreciate what you provided in the packet, and we did look at it, and two or three of our members have also been participating in CPDC meetings or watching from home.
Great. Well, thank you very much. May I actually share my screen?
I think that would be okay.
Great. Let's see. All right. Are you able to see the aerial image?
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening, Select Board. I'm Attorney Josh Latham here this evening on behalf of GC Federa Contracting. They are the applicant to propose to redevelop the vacant lot at 18 Woburn Street as a mixed-use project. With me tonight are Giuseppe Federa, who's the developer, and Giovanni Federa, who's the project engineer. This application, as mentioned, is currently before CPDC. We have participated in 2 public hearings with the CPDC, and CPDC has said they're prepared to move forward with its review, but there is a threshold question relative to vehicular access for this project. So they've directed us to appear before the Select Board to discuss with you tonight the concept of allowing access through the municipal lot to an underneath parking garage for this project. So specifically, the project proposes to access the underneath parking garage through the municipal lot in this rear location. So within this aerial slide, you'll see where this site is. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. 18 Woburn Street is a highly visible location in the downtown, situated on the southerly side of Woburn Street, right across from Town Hall. It's next to the 15-foot right-of-way, which you can see here. That right-of-way, as it enters from Woburn Street, it's existed since about 1946. To the south of the lot, you'll see that there is a row of public parking spaces. To the west, there is an office building, a 3-story office building at 2224 Woburn Street. The right-of-way, as you know, is a one-way entrance into the municipal lot with a circular traffic pattern, which then exits out between the MF Charles building and the Reading Cooperative Bank as a one-way onto Haven Street. So this site has been vacant for 15 years. Originally, it was an office building from about 1913 until 2006 when the building burned down. The original building was a historical building. It had 2 parking spaces on the right next to the right-of-way, and then 1 in the rear. The 3 parking spaces you see on the site here are roughly the location where those historical parking spaces were for that pre-existing office building. So when the building burnt down in 2006, it was purchased soon thereafter, and the current owner went ahead with CPDC for site plan approval to build a 10,000 square foot commercial building with 100-seat restaurant on the first floor and office space on the second and third floors. That project proposed 4 parking spaces to the rear of the building, directly accessed from the right-of-way. For reasons unknown, the current owner never moved forward with that plan, and thus it's been vacant for 15 years. So what GC Federa is proposing to do is to redevelop this site as a mixed-use project under the Downtown Smart Growth Overlay District. The Federas, quickly about them, they're a family business, they're multi-generational Reading residents. They understand the importance of this location, that it is highly visible, and they've spent significant time, over a year, with their design team, trying to really build what they think would be a great concept for a landmark location in the downtown. So their proposal is to build a 3-story mixed-use building with underneath parking garage. The proposal includes approximately 2,350 square feet of restaurant or retail use on the first floor, directly accessed from Woburn Street. And then underneath would be the access from the municipal lot into the underneath parking garage. This proposal also includes a 490-foot deck along the rear of the property to provide outdoor dining or retail use, which we think would be a great addition to really revitalize this area of the downtown. The mixed-use aspect is 6 residential apartments, being 3 on the second floor and 3 on the third floor. So the proposal, let me see if you can see this plan. Is this plan now showing up?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So this is really the concept plan for the ground level, the parking garage. And what they're proposing would be 8 parking spaces with 1 ADA space. It would also, what they're proposing are 3 electric vehicle charging stations, and this parking meets all zoning requirements. So it's a ratio of 1.33 spaces per residential apartment. In fact, that provides 1 space for each apartment and then an overflow of 2 spaces for commercial or for guest use. So this project also presents a unique opportunity for the town. Obviously, as I've mentioned, it abuts right along the right-of-way. Well, that right-of-way is 15 feet wide, and as I mentioned, it dates back to about 1946. The reason I mention that is because, as you'll see here from this plan, tractor trucks and Reading Fire Department trucks cannot access through this 15-foot right-of-way without bleeding into either the pedestrian pathway or onto this property. So this creates an opportunity where we can actually work with the town, and the applicant is proposing to donate or dedicate an easement along the right-of-way for the entire length, approximately 5 feet here up at the entrance point from Woburn Street, down to about 3 feet where it enters into the municipal lot. So this would essentially provide the town the opportunity to create either pedestrian dedicated access from Woburn Street to the lot that doesn't currently exist, or to widen the right-of-way to create a 20-foot entrance up at the front down to 18 feet here at the lower level. So that leads to the request we're seeking tonight. We're before you because due to the grade changes from Woburn Street down to the municipal lot, it is not really possible to create a direct access point from the right-of-way into an underneath parking garage due to height requirements and so forth. And therefore, we can't provide direct access from the right-of-way as historically has been done for this site. What we're proposing instead is to ask the town for permission to create this access point and exit point here. This would be a 22-foot wide aisle width. It would allow us to enter through this point and exit through this point directly into the right-of-way here. The key point is there would be no net loss of public parking spaces under this plan. Currently, there are 8 parking spaces along this rear row. Our engineer, Giovanni Federa, who's here tonight, has reviewed this, and really just by shifting these parking spaces over and eliminating some unused space, we can still provide 8 parking spaces and this access point. So there would be no net loss of parking. With that, if I could actually turn over quickly to Giovanni to just quickly describe that design concept.
Thank you, Josh. All right, so I will, Giovanni Federa with Federa Engineering. I will share the screen and show you what we got. So as Josh, he went through the redesign, the layout, and from an engineering perspective, it's, ideally coming from the right of way would be the best, right? However, the grade change over here, it's at a 10% slope. And when a car is, coming in and taking a turn right there and trying to access parking spot 8, they're essentially creating they're making a U-turn that's it's just not practical. It's really tight. In addition to that, when that car is making that turn, it's also fighting the grade of the right of way. And the car needs to have a vertical clearance. The vertical clearance, if it was designed that way, would have a first floor elevation of about 3 feet or 3.5 feet above the sidewalk elevation. So it wouldn't even be practical for ADA compliant, so we really were just trying to fight the grade along the right of way. And we went through so many different designs. We one time had the access coming through right here, but we really determined that this is the best layout that we came up with. It's, there's no net loss in parking, but we can also provide vehicles coming in from the right of way and, going down that pathway, as well as making the turn into the parking lot, in addition to them leaving the parking lot. And I made a little schematic that I wanted to show you today. This is something that I think is a pretty good visual of, what would happen and how much space there is for, this is the wheelbase 40 truck. So the largest truck that would be going down that right of way. We can see it going down the right of way. We can also see the cars going into the parking lot and the cars leaving the parking lot. I chose to use parking spot 1 as the controlling car to, make that right turn out of the parking lot and into the municipal lot, just because it's kind of the controlling vehicle of when it would be merging with this pathway right here. But it clearly shows that it's feasible. There's enough space where the cars can go in, the cars can go out, and when they're leaving the garage, they will have that yield area where they can see the vehicles coming down the right of way. So, it's definitely safe from a public safety factor. We redesigned the parking lot. We had the column. I know the architect talked to a structural engineer where we could shift the column right here as compared to it being previously located right here. When it was located right there, it was really tight for parking spot 1. So, it opens up the space between 1 and 2 pretty well. But we have the two compact spots at 5 and 6, and all the other spots they are, in compliance with size. And so I just wanted to show the engineering side of it, the feasibility, it's practical, and we've been working on this project for a long time. We've gone through so many different designs, and I truly believe that this is the best layout that we've come up with, the best layout that is for the project that's going to be, a good addition to the town, in addition to not losing any parking spots to the municipal lot. So that's, what I have for now, and I'll leave it up to Josh to finish off.
Great.
Josh, would you like me to continue sharing?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So just really to close out, I'd also like to point out this is not an unusual situation. Really within the municipal lot, there are already spots that are dedicated to private access. In fact, if you look at this screen here in the aerial, you can see parking on private property. These areas are actually hash marked out to ensure that that access remains open for that vehicular access to those sites. You can also see it pretty well on this plan here where they're X'd out. But really in closing, I guess what we're requesting is permission to use a portion of the site of the municipal lot to access the underneath parking garage. Really from a net benefit perspective, there's no loss of public parking. We think this would allow revitalization of really what's been a vacant, overgrown, underutilized lot for a long time, which is in a very important location of the downtown. It's really a linchpin site. We think it would provide significant benefit to the downtown growth. It's a rationally scaled project. It's intelligently designed. We put a lot of effort into trying to make something that we think would be a real benefit to the redevelopment of the downtown. And we believe the potential to widen and improve the right-of-way provides that unique opportunity where we can work with the town to make this a better municipal access and municipal lot. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Chris, hang on a second. Bob, Bob, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd just like to ask Josh a couple questions. From my understanding, which is at a distance and not expert, this is not a presentation that CPDC has seen, and this is not what I've heard from CPDC. Is that accurate?
That's correct. So CPDC saw the plan we submitted initially to the board, which would show loss of 2 parking spaces. And this is the result of us really redesigning and trying to re-hit that access to the lower level. I don't believe that CPDC would see this more negatively than what we had. I think it's more just that we were able to revisit this and come up with a better design.
Okay, but CPDC asked the board to review the work done to date, not something you've done since. I just want to clarify to the board, any of you that have been going to CPDC, this is not something CPDC has seen. So I think it's a little unfair to put the board on the spot when this is not something that CPDC has passed along to them.
Well, if I could just clarify, I mean, I think from our perspective, it's a concept. We're not asking for approval of a specific plan this evening. Really, this is a threshold question. Would the select board be willing to allow us to utilize this portion of the municipal lot to create an access point? And how that access point looks is certainly still subject to a lot of discussion with CPDC and back with this board. So this is really an introductory meeting to try to introduce the question and see if we can answer any questions about it.
Yeah, and I can appreciate all that, but I'm not sure that all staff would agree about your statement that there's no net loss in parking.
Well, I mean, I think just from a pure, there are 8 spaces there now, and there would be 8 spaces as a result.
So thank you, Bob. That actually my question was going to be the briefing that we got from staff doesn't match what was presented here. We were told we were looking at a potential loss of 3 spaces, and this plan is absolutely different. So that also means that this plan has not gone through the PTTF, and forgive me if I got that wrong. So no one from staff has really looked at this either.
Well, we did submit this plan prior to the PTTF, but I know that they were formally looking at the prior plan.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to handle this, but we do get feedback from staff and feedback from CPDC, and now we don't have either of those things on this this plan. But I'm sure some board members have some questions as well. So let's go ahead and open that up to some questions. Carlo?
Thanks. Not so much a question, is that I've attended 90% of the CPDC meetings and all of these meetings with this project. And this is the third that, to my knowledge, the third set of plans to alleviate the parking issues. So the last meeting that Josh and Giovanni and Giuseppe Federa presented to was CBDC approved the building in concept, in theory. They love the design. They addressed all the issues. And then, yes, Karen, you're correct. The design was to take away 2 to 3 spots from the municipal lot. Since that time, they went back to the drawing board, so to speak. They actually took away an apartment to accommodate the retail space and an elevator. So, right. And this is not a hearing, correct, I agree. But for me, taking away 2 spots or 3 spots was going to be a detriment to the downtown. I think we'd all agree on that. So now, when CPD revisits this, then they're going to come back to us again because we control that, that property. So it'd be good to have a discussion tonight on how the 4 of us feel, so CPDC will get a sense of how we feel, because they're already okay with the building. There's just this new presentation that they have to, revisit and discuss and approve. So there is going to be some more back and forth, but I think we should have a quick discussion on: do we like this? Do we not like this? What does CBDC want to hear from us? Because the ball was thrown to our court. Things changed a bit. I agree, but CBDC definitely wants our feedback. I'll leave it there.
Okay, other board members? Chris?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I remember back after the election got over, I was on the CPDC meeting, but I didn't obviously speak or anything. And they had mentioned that I was actually in the meeting and thought that I would have a problem with the parking situation. And I did back then, bring it back to your tent saga thing that you mentioned earlier. In the video that I did for that, I did mention that the CVS thing where they did the parking survey said they could lose 2 or 3 spots and it wasn't going to be a big deal. And I said that there's no way you can lose spots behind there. So in the packet that we got right here, to me, it looked as if we were still losing these parking spots that were over there. You know what I mean? So it's refreshing to see that we wouldn't be losing those spots. I guess would be the good thing out of this. The spots that are over there on the side that are currently there, that's on the owner's property though, and it just randomly happens to be these parking spots. Is that the case? Like we don't own those?
That's correct. So there are 2 parking spaces along the right of way. Those are on the private property, and those predate the burning of the building, but they've been restriped since, but those are the original spaces. And then there was one that kind of turns in behind where the building used to be. Those are 3 private spaces that are essentially just being used by local businesses right now.
So for anybody that is looking at this, to see that those spots would just vanish, they might get the, they might end up thinking that we lost another 3 additional spots, but we don't actually own these to begin with. So that's the case. So, and I guess the other thing is, would we end up having to pay to restripe the lot, or are those spots that are over there currently going to be the same size as the existing spots? Like, are they getting reduced? How is it actually fitting into the block?
Can speak up on that. Right now, the spots that are there right now, they're angled at about a 60-degree angled parking spot. We have it now at a perpendicular parking spot at 9/18, which meets the zoning bylaws.
And the existing spots are 9/18 to begin with?
They are what they are shown as, but they may be a little oversized. I don't know if they meet I don't know if they're at the minimum of the zoning bylaw, but it's going from, you know, an acceptable spot to an acceptable spot.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Mark?
Thanks, Karen. So first, I'm wondering, Julie, without putting you on the spot, if there are comments you wanted to make, not that you have to, but if you would like to, I would love to hear from you with some of your thoughts first, and then I have a number of comments after that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would like to clarify a few things, and I apologize for the confusion because I should have been more clear in my memo. The CPDC reviewed the prior plan. This plan has been updated slightly since the plan they last saw. I do not believe the building footprint itself has changed, and I believe the impacts to be largely the same between the two plans. The PTTF did look at both plans, both the prior version and the new version that you're looking at tonight. And the sentiments from their review of the new plan are expressed in the memo. With regards to the restriping of the parking lot, I think that, you know, while the applicant can demonstrate that it might be able to be restriped in such a way that there would be no net loss of parking spaces, the staff, we're currently working with Beta Group to get an estimate for full design of what a redesign of the CVS parking lot could look like, given some other competing interests and the need to re-look at that lot from a number of other different perspectives. So there's no guarantee at this time that that striping layout that is shown on the plan from the applicant would be what ends up being proposed by our design consultant or what ends up being striped at the end of the day. So I just want to clarify so that you know that, you know, we might end up with a loss of parking spaces, you know, regardless of this project or not, based on that redesign that we're looking at. So that's still a little bit of a moving target and an unknown at this point.
Thanks, Julie. So, so that's very helpful. So my gut reaction, and Bob, thanks for your comments as well. I think that I have no interest in running ahead of CPDC, frankly, but I do have a number of concerns that pop up. The net loss of parking is the biggest one. And if it were possible to restripe and accommodate those extra spots, that's a bonus for the town. That's great. We have a parking problem. It would be wonderful to have those extra spots. So I view this as we're going to be giving up 2 to 3 spots, period. As far as people that want to shop in downtown Reading, there's going to be a loss of spots versus what could be. I think that this is part of a bigger look in terms of that parking area in general before I'd be willing to kind of weigh in on losing any spots or changing any spots. And so if that's a study that needs to be done, my personal feeling is that's exactly what needs to happen first. I've got some concerns about if there's a 100-seat restaurant going in, it seems to me that at lunchtime, let's say, and at dinner, obviously, and dinner I'm not quite as worried about, but at lunchtime, I'm not quite sure what we do with the patrons that want to go to the restaurant and where they're going to park. It feels like there's a net extra need of parking, not anything else. And the spots underneath relate to residents. So I understand that. So I have a question on how do we accommodate 100 people at lunch or 50 people at lunch, frankly, adding to kind of the load in that area as it stands right now. And that again feeds back to this bigger solution question. I'm just wondering also, it strikes me, how are deliveries going to get handled? I mean, it's got to be a mess already, but I've got to imagine that if we're adding a lot more delivery kind of activity there, I'm thinking of those large trucks and things, it just feels like we're adding congestion. So you know, I'm not asking for feedback now. I'm just thinking that that's something that it just feels like we're scrunching more into the same space, and I'm not seeing it lightening. In fact, I'm seeing it getting much more congested, and that's a concern. I think that's it. I'm kind of repeating it, but it feels to me that this is part of a bigger discussion on parking in that lot, how to configure it, what's possible. If we can just restripe it and get new spots now, great. You know, we got to do that, you know, but it feels to me like there's going to be a net loss of spots here somehow and more demand at the same time. And those are both going in the wrong direction. I love the idea of new activity here. I just think it needs a lot more thought before we could move it. That I'd be happy moving ahead here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Quick clarifying question, Bob or Julie. Josh made a comment earlier that the current right-of-way does not allow the fire trucks to get in there and out. Is that accurate? When or how would they get to that back area?
I can speak on behalf of that. So I will share the screen one more time, and I can show you that we did do a simulation for the vehicle fire truck. And so actually the controlling vehicle was the delivery trucks, which is the wheelbase 40. That's the larger truck, and that does make it in. The fire truck, this is what it's showing as a display. It does make it in. You probably look at this line right here as, oh, well, it's going over the curb. It's not going over the curb. That is actually the back of the vehicle where it swings into that area. So the entire wheelbase stays within the roadway and is able to make the turn into the right of way.
Understood. I appreciate that. My question was, today, is it a true statement that a fire ladder truck cannot get back there? And is that a concern currently for our first responders? And maybe we don't know the answer to that.
I've sat in Gene's office, which is a window right on top of this, and seen many 18-wheelers struggle with the corner. You know, especially if there's no one parked on the hill, it's not impossible to do. When there are two cars parked, it's a struggle. I don't believe it's a problem for fire truck access. It's just a challenge. It's clearly not easy. And if someone was to lean into the parking a little, that again is not the town's, if they were to park closer to Woburn, it might become impossible to make that corner. But that would be their parking where they're not supposed to. So I'd say, you know, as laid out, it's tight, but it's not a problem. And as the chief once told me, fire trucks can pretty much get wherever they need to go. They may cause some damage along the way, but they'll get there.
Okay. So I share some of the same concerns that Mark has. In addition, I have thank you, Julie, for saying that you actually did have a chance to look at this plan before. I'm still concerned that CBDC has not seen this new plan and it's coming, and we're coming to us, because we should get a plan that has been approved and agreed to by everyone. This is a big building for this lot. It's not a big lot. I think it's a great concept, but I share the concerns with the additional circulation and pressure on what is already a highly used municipal lot in town. And we were already in the process of putting together a parking team, in addition to PTTF parking committee, that I believe is also going to take a look at this. So I have a real concern if we're talking about giving away municipal access, because I'm not even sure the mechanism by which we would do this, but losing spaces, predefining access that we can never use while these other processes are in place does concern me. As Mark phrased it, more of the big picture review, I think. And again, I'm concerned that we haven't really heard from any of the abutting businesses, because last summer we heard a lot from abutting businesses about their concerns with that rear parking lot. And as it was in our packet, and hopefully they got the email from Julie. Sometimes they go in the wrong folders. I know those businesses are very, very concerned about parking back there and making sure that their customers can get to them. So this can't be a decision that we make lightly. And those are my thoughts on it at this moment. Carlo?
Thanks. This is for Julie. Julie, is there a meeting on the next agenda for CPDC to review these plans?
Yes, as of today, this application is still on the agenda for this coming Monday, May 24th. And so the CPDC will have a conversation with the applicant if the applicant wishes to continue the conversation.
Okay, so I guess the hypothetical is, for us, is that if CPDC approves the plan and the design, it's going to come back to us, which I understand we can have another conversation. And I agree with you, Mark, about the deliveries, but an average delivery is half hour, you know, for getting in and out. So that's, and they do it on Main Street. Some trucks double park. So that gets done all the time. I understand in a lot, it's a little bit different, but they're not there for a long time because the drivers are on a schedule and it can be done early in the morning. So you could schedule the deliveries, but I understand your concern, but that can be worked around. But from what I heard from CPDC, that there can be an office building there by right. So that's what, you know, by our bylaws, that it can be an office building tomorrow. So I'm just putting these thoughts out there that if CPDC approves this new plan, then it's going to come back to us. Then we have a hearing, and then we just, you know, talk through it. But I'm glad that we're throwing some things out there tonight, and it's, you know, the previous boards and approve this layout, approve this 40R smart growth. So not that we have to abide by everything, but it's kind of our duty to help grow downtown, in my opinion. Thanks.
Yeah, could I just make one comment? And, oh, sorry, Mark, and I'll let you go.
Oh, please, go ahead, Karen.
Just the plan that Josh showed us earlier, Carlo, just to be clear, it's the same lot with parking on the lot. This is a lot fully covered by a building, and the only way they can have any parking is by taking over some municipal land. So I just see that as a difference. But in general, I agree with you. It's a neat comment. I mean, it's a neat concept. Sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
What do you mean they're taking over land? I'm just trying to clarify. What land are they taking over?
They cannot do this project without taking some space and use of the parking lot, which is a public parking lot. That is not what the previous design that was approved by a previous select board. That Josh can put a slide up there again. He shows parking that was there. So a smaller building would have room on the spot for some parking, and a smaller building could potentially do away with the need to use the municipal lot for access. I'm just saying, this isn't the same plan that was approved before, and it's not the same use of the parcel that was used before. The parcel before had parking.
Thank you. Are you talking about the CPDC plan or like the building that was there that burnt down?
Josh talked about what the prior owner had approved after the building burned down, and the prior owner had a plan approved that showed 3 spots parking on the lot, because that's what you would assume when you own a lot. Where are you going to park vehicles? And you sort of design to that. Well, this is a different concept. This is we're going to cover essentially 100% of the lot, and we're going to ask the town of Reading to help us get to it. So, and then again, that's a permanent type of thing. And so that's why this is a concern and why it's different from a previously approved site plan.
Okay, I just want to know what you were talking about. I thought you were talking about the approved plans from CPDC a month ago. Okay, you're talking about the previous proposed building.
Yep. Okay. Mark?
Thanks, Karen. So even if it comes back from CPDC, my concern is that this is an overstressed area. It needs a real plan before it moves ahead, in my opinion. And I would want to see that happen before we would approve the usage of the land that way. It just strikes me that we've been already dealing with this. It's tough. As Julie mentioned, there is a desire to kind of look into how we might better utilize it. And I think that's great. I think that as that activity is taking place, we should look at this as a possibility related to that also. But I'm concerned that if you add demand for another 20 spots to that zone, and we're conceivably taking away a little bit of the land that otherwise would have been helpful, it sounds like we're going in the wrong direction. And I would want that to be considered as part of the bigger picture. I do remember, I think a couple of years ago, we were talking about the bank, Northern Bank, and they wanted to play with, we looked at the teller machine and we looked at two-way entry coming off of Haven Street and all sorts of things. And I remember that being an absolute nightmare and just deemed impossible. It's a tough area. We just need to figure out what the best uses are going to be. And I'd rather explore that first before kind of adding this to the mix.
Okay. Okay. So, so I appreciate you all coming tonight. So you've heard kind of where the board members are on this topic at the moment. Do you have any further questions for us?
Just to clarify a point, I know I talked about what used to be there, then what was approved back in 2007, and then now what we're proposing. And I think there may have been some bleeding about, kind of, I guess, the understanding of how I was describing that. We're not proposing a 100-seat restaurant. We're proposing about 2,300 square feet of retail restaurant space in the first floor. And under zoning, of course, within 300 feet of a public lot. Under the underlying zoning district, Business B, we could build 85% lot coverage and provide no parking on site. We'd only require site plan approval. And so that's what was approved essentially back in 2006. And that's really an as of right development. Certainly there are reasons that developers are not building that right now. There is not a market for the office. There is not a same market of just the commercial use. The downtown smart growth district, because it affords us ability to have that complementary use of residential and commercial, that's what makes this a viable project. And really that's what revitalizes the downtown. So when we do talk about, higher burden on our parking, consider the flip side of that is that's a benefit. That's actually the downtown getting revitalized. And certainly parking has to catch up to that. But we want businesses and we want to build more restaurants and we want to build more retail in the downtown. That's the whole point. And I certainly recognize that that strains parking. But I think at the end of the day, that's what we're really looking for as a community. This is a downtown district. It's meant to be business. The residential affords almost like a contained customer base. So just stepping back philosophically, this is what we're really trying to go for. It's in the master plan, it's in the economic development plan, and it's the downtown smart growth district. All of these things lead over many years of the town planning towards this type of a use for this exact location. And we certainly recognize if we could do this without having to use a dedicated access through the municipal lot, we would absolutely do that. It's a better project for it. And we truly don't think it has any negative impact. And even when you net balance the potential not being able to build an additional parking space here versus getting revitalized restaurant, outdoor dining, overlooking the municipal lot, I think when we balance that out, I would really say, I think that's an overall positive for the town. I hear all the concerns. I know you hear all the political aspects of this. And I don't envy your decision-making position sometimes. I truly don't. And I understand the difficulty that is. I would just hit back on the point of saying that I think that overall, this truly is a benefit to the downtown. And I appreciate your time tonight. We did hear a lot, and we will certainly take that under advisement as we go back to CPDC. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Federa. Mr. Federa.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, folks.
Okay, all right. Moving on, we have one set of minutes and then future meeting agenda topics, and then we can call it a wrap. Mark?
Thanks, Karen. I have one suggestion I'd like to add to the minutes. I think that the board, and I certainly in particular, have made a point to make it clear to new liquor license applicants that the board is very focused on liquor law compliance, in particular, preventing underage drinking, but frankly also for just procedures for dealing with how drinking happens. I'd like to put that back in, or not put it back in, put it in to both of the comments, to both of the licenses. We did have that discussion. I just think that would add value to it.
Okay.
You did, yep, you did.
That was my only comment.
I have no edits. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Carlo. You good, Chris?
Yes, Karen, thank you.
Great. Okay, can I entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Motion to accept the minutes of May 4th, 2021 as amended.
Second.
Bob, did you have a question?
Karen, I thought you sent in some edits.
I did.
I don't know that the rest of the board has seen them. So I'm not sure they are approving what you added.
Thank you. Okay, so I sent them in yesterday, Monday.
Does Caitlin have them?
Yes, I can pull them up.
Thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, but can you make it bigger, please, if possible?
Okay, so it doesn't look, I'm looking at under the town manager report, it doesn't look like anything was done with these edits. So I don't really.
No, I didn't interpret, I don't change anything until the board votes on them.
Okay, but so under town manager report, I was hoping you could go clarify that little area because it's not very clear.
I sent the sentence to Caitlin when she showed it.
Okay.
I think it was about communicating through the website via email to the board. Not the
town website to send email to the select board.
It had, because it had to do with, I thought it had to do with the fake email.
Yeah, there it is. Using the town website to send email to the select board is sort of the long way to say it in the accurate way.
But that's no longer possible, right? That's the change.
They have to use the select board email address, but you cannot technically send it through the website. That's correct.
Okay. Great. Okay, I thought these were going to be typed because these are obviously handwritten. So this is a little difficult. I apologize for everybody to look at. So could we type these in red so that and then send out a fresh copy so that the other members can just see it in context?
We still have time to do these next time, Karen.
Yeah, since we only have one tonight, I'm fine with that. I just think it would be easier, and I appreciate the effort, Caitlin.
So I think we technically have a motion in front of us.
In a second. So how do we undo that?
So do we table it?
I would entertain a motion to table the previous motion to accept minutes as amended.
Move to table the motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Carlo. Okay, so can I have a vote on the motion to table the prior motion? Mark?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
And Karen, yes. Thank you. Okay, great. Future meeting agenda topics. Oh, Mark, sorry.
No worries. So town meeting had made a few instructional motions for us to take a look at that I think we ought to put onto an agenda to have a discussion about. One of them, I think, related to mental health. The other related to, I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but it was Barry Berman's motion related to kind of community, kind of police community meetings, I guess I would call it. I think we should just put them on to a future agenda so that we can talk about them and decide, you know, what action, if any, we would take. The one related to mental health was in some ways specific in what it was asking for in terms of creating kind of a broad group of folks. And again, I just kind of want to put them out there that we should put them onto an agenda and discuss what our thoughts are and how to proceed.
I did see the email from Barry, and I assume, Chris, you and Carlos saw that as well. Are you guys okay with that concept like that? Okay. Yeah, we would, okay. I think maybe in the beginning of July. Would that be a good time frame, Bob?
Yeah, Barry's email is certainly one thing, and that's fine.
Mhm.
In terms of anything town meeting did, I just asked to wait till the town clerk certifies and approves all the exact language. I've not seen that yet. So I just want to be careful. We all kind of remember things, but I want to get it from her formally. So that doesn't mean you can't go ahead and plan it on an agenda. I just wanted to point.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little vague, Mark, on the mental health. I don't remember. It was really long town meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if it got amended, frankly, or not. So I think, Bob, your point is well taken.
Yeah, because I have the original instructional motions, but as you recall, I couldn't edit them. So they were in PDF. So she really needs to work on that. She need to go back to the tapes in some cases.
Yep,
But obviously we're happy to provide those as soon as she can do it.
Okay, Carlo? Yep.
This is for Bob. Thank you. Bob, can we get an update maybe in the next, I don't know, however much time you need on the Burbank assessment of the land over there, the Zani property?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
What I thought we were doing an assessment on what's buildable, you know, what's dry and what we can do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have a pretty good idea of that. The only action that's missing is a legal action to basically create two parcels. But I can certainly come in and show you things, yes.
So do we also need a Camp Curtis Guild, the same thing?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that. We're just in the middle of having a discussion that's complicated.
Okay.
I couldn't give you a good update today, but hopefully, you know, in July I could, June or July.
Okay, great. Who else had their hand up? Chris? Yep.
Thanks, Karen. Are the water rates, that whole thing taking place at the next board meeting? Is that the deal?
Yes.
So is it possible to put that James Gallagher guy from last time onto that meeting? Is that how that would get handled? He was the one that wanted the pool thing or whatever that he mentioned, that he came on for public comment.
And I had a second resident call me, and it was a different water abatement request related to, there are some homes in Reading with second meters, and they currently are just assessed water and sewer like every other. So there's really two requests for abatements. So, Mark, you're doing this longer, you might be able to phrase this for us, but so it almost sounds like, you know, what is our policy going to be on water abatements? I don't, Mark, Bob, do we do any at this point?
Both requests have come before previous boards, and the second water meter maybe every 2-3 years. So, you know, if you want staff to kind of give the same presentation because it's a new board, that's fine. I would say that, to my knowledge, the board has never discussed abatements during a hearing on rates. That would be different. Doesn't mean you can't. I'm just saying it hasn't happened. And it would be challenging, I think, to set policy during a hearing on rates.
Yeah, I was going to suggest
about policy.
Yeah, they're really two separate topics. One of them really is the setting of the rates and kind of understanding revenues and what's going on and the impact of COVID and what we're going to do going forward and what that means for reserves. The second, I think, is more of a policy discussion related to.
And they do overlap. I do, if you're going to start abating, a bunch of sewer requests, it's going to have an impact on sewer revenues.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if, and I don't know the math off the top of my head, but if you were going to take some steps towards abating some sewer charges, we would have to set the rate of sewer accordingly to assume less revenue. So honestly, we're just going to increase the sewer rate to make up for the lost revenue because somebody's got to pay the costs. It's not like there's free money and there's, costs that just disappear. It's just reallocating the sewer charges among all the users, except for the ones you give rebates to or abatements to.
Was it Jane that made the presentation the last few times about this on rates? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know. I've done it a lot. She's normally been there. Either of us can do it. I remember at one of your hearings, some of the other staff was there. Peter Isbell, the water sewer supervisor, for instance, was asked some questions on the spot, and he nailed out all of them. I remember. So, we can certainly bring some, folks to the meeting if you have questions. Historically, again, these are the two most common questions, and the second water meter by far is the most common question.
I did see that on another select board agenda. I think it was back in 2018. It wasn't too long ago.
It's every 2-3 years. And it goes back 20 or more years when the then select board or selectmen made a somewhat sudden change to not allow second water meters with a different price. They did set it out in the future, some amount of dates, but a lot of people put in systems with the assumption that this would be forever, and then it wasn't. So a lot of those people are still, at that many years later, coming back, because the board 20 odd years ago changed their mind, I guess I'll say.
So would it make sense then, hearing your feedback after we set the water and sewer rates to maybe have an agenda item and Bob, if you could have staff provide us with some of the pros and cons of the whole abatement decision. And then at least to Chris's point, and the other resident, we are, we're following up and we're not dropping these items, even if we can.
And the board should feel free at the hearing to discuss anything else that's on your mind. I mean, I know I've talked to Ann about different things that 1 or 2 communities are doing in terms of making water bills more affordable.
Okay.
I would have to consult town council for some of this stuff.
Okay.
But for instance, can you draw a line on income and have water rates? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely draw a line on different usage of water and have different tiers.
Mm-hmm.
Winchester, when they kind of brought some of their debt from the water system onto the tax levy, they also changed the water rates with a tiered system, so the hospital would pay a lot more because suddenly the hospital was not paying taxes and escaped a lot of the water charges when it was moved to the tax bill. So, I'm familiar with some of the tools you have, but feel free to ask any question you've ever thought of, and we might have to do some research. And if it really comes to it and the board needs to have another hearing in the fall because of some ideas you've come up with, that's okay. It won't drastically change the rates, I don't think, anything you do.
Okay.
Bob,
One thing that came up, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, Bob, do you think that we'll have any more insight into the $6 million fund coming Reading's way in terms of what it might be used for?
Sharon and Gail attended a remote meeting today, and there's another one Thursday, and I haven't caught up with either one yet. They both said the one Thursday looked to be more promising. So I really don't know. I think the one Thursday might be sponsored or involves the US Treasury, which is the key to this whole thing.
Got it. Yeah, because the reason I bring it up is because if it turned out that potentially some of that money could be used for infrastructure improvements, then conceivably we could use some of that for sewer, water and sewer improvements, which would impact, because we're trying to balance between usage and making sure that the pipes are good and maintenance and things. So that could have a big impact on things.
Yeah, and either you could lower rates even more or use less reserves, depending on the juggling act. I've done preliminary work last winter and was kind of targeting 3 to 5%, just so you know. So that's what I'll bring in, but I'll show you the tool, and you can end up with anything you want, honestly. You know, probably won't be minus 10%, but within reason. Because remember, you know, for everything that you do now, there's a price to be paid in the future.
All right. One thing that came up this week, the Ipswich River is back on the 10 most endangered rivers lists. So they have so the people that get to use it now in all these different towns have to have a permit or by regulation. So I went to the state site and looked up Reading. So Meadowbrook is on there, and actually DPW is on there.
I'm not sure what the list is. Uses of water?
Using Ipswich water.
No, we don't use any. Meadowbrook, I don't think we use any, other than we have to maintain a well field, you know, according to DEP. But we're certainly not using it for drinking water or fire flow or any of that.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of odd. I can send you the link.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just on the books.
That Meadowbrook has an irrigation system that may in fact do that. I hadn't really ever thought about it, but it would make sense.
Okay. All right. Mark?
One more question. Can we set up some kind of, maybe it's a monthly update, maybe ask Ryan to talk about kind of progress on water tower activities, status of RFP, kind of just what kind of how it's moving. Maybe even just once a month, we kind of follow that.
Yeah, I can ask him, and you know, a memo may be all you really need.
Yeah, that may do it.
Depending on what's going on.
Great. Yep.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I could entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Carlo. Okay, as I see you, Mark,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Karen, and we are adjourned. Congratulations. Great. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Have a
Take
good
care.
night.
Good night, everybody.